Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to NXTGEN Racing. And it is my pleasure to introduce and bring you tonight the season opening round of the NXTGEN Racing Intercontinental Challenge GT3 Championship for 2021, as brought to you on Assetto Corsa Competitione, the PC version, and we're bringing this to you in collaboration with the SimGrid and Coach Dave Academy. Tonight, as you can see on the schedule here, all of our times in Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT or UTC, will be getting underway with the driver's briefing in approximately 24.5 minutes, where all our drivers will be called in for a word with our chief organiser, who will lay down the law and make sure everybody's aware of the rules going into the season opener. Of course, tension's high and all of our drivers getting used to racing with the rules that will be applying to this series. And then straight after that, we'll be getting underway with qualifying, the 15-minute session to determine our grid order for the race. After that, at 7:45 tonight, we'll be getting underway with the race, the one feature race, and it is a 90-minute race. We're no longer running 75-minute feature races for the opening rounds all the way up to and before the season finale. Instead, we are now to 90-minute races, so an extra 15 minutes of racing action, and also some additional complexities to the strategy there, but we'll talk more about that in a second. And of course, straight after the race, we'll be looking to hold post-race podium interviews for our top three finishers. That'll be at approximately 9:15 tonight. Now in the commentary box, you have myself, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and this broadcast is being brought to you on 3 different media platforms tonight. You can tune in via the official YouTube channel of NXTGEN Racing, that's NXTGEN Racing on YouTube. Alternatively, if you're Facebook inclined, you can go to facebook.com/groups and check out NXTGEN Racing there. Or last but not least, if you're a bit of a Twitch person, then you can always follow on Twitch using my official Twitch channel, that is TX141 on Twitch, where you can tune in on that platform. But enough about myself, let's come on to our sponsors then. So we kick off with the SimGrid. Who are they? What do they stand for? And what do they mean to this series? Well, the SimGrid is a place for amateur and professional sim racers to compete against fellow drivers in leagues and endurance events for Assetto Corsa Competitione, and recently expanding to R-Factor 2. And we're grateful to have the SimGrid on board. The SimGrid providing us with members of the stewarding team. We have live stewards in play, plus also post-race stewards, and the SimGrid supported us in that regard, and also providing us with the platform in which to advertise and host this series. So without them, it would not be possible. Secondly, we come on to Coach Dave Academy, a name of a company that many will be familiar with. Named after David Perel, of course, it is the home of amateur and professional sim racers looking to up their game through coaching, setups and track maps. Not just anymore for Assetto Corsa Competition, but also for iRacing. But of course, we're focused on ACC, and if you are interested, why not check out CoachDaveAcademy.com today and take your racing to the next level. Whether you're looking to gain a tenth of a second or gain a whole second, or look to set up the car for more efficient driving experience, Coach Dave Academy is the place to go to, and we're grateful to have Coach Dave Academy on board once again as one of our principal sponsors, supporting us in running the series from start to finish. Now, moving away from our sponsors, of course, many of you will be asking at this point, what about the calendar? Well, here it is, ladies and gentlemen, the 5-round calendar that takes us from now, the 23rd of November, all the way up to the 21st of December 2021, just in time for Christmas. All of the events being held on Tuesday nights at the same time as what you're experiencing tonight. Round 1 takes place in the Japanese circuit of Suzuka, and we'll be bringing the introduction to the circuit specifically a little bit later on the show. In a week's time, we'll then be heading to the South African circuit of Kyalami, and then following that, we'll be going over to Australia for Bathurst, also known as Mount Panorama Raceway. For round number 4, we go to the United States of America for Laguna Seca, and then last but not least, we conclude on the special super endurance race that will be held at Spa-Francorchamps in Europe, in Belgium in particular. All this series concluding as of the 21st of December 2021. But to get there, we have to get through all 5 of our rounds, and of course we start everything off tonight on the Japanese island. We start at Suzuka. Now, one of the big draws for this series, our prize pool. Last time out in the European GT3 Series Season 2, our prize pool consisted of a variety of prizes from Coach Dave Academy, and also from what I believe at the time was Next Level Racing. Well, this time the prize pool has moved from prizes in terms of setups and also advice and equipment. It's gone from that to a monetary prize pool, a total prize pool of $400 United States dollars, and as you can see here, it is split as follows. Our winner of this series, it is a Drivers' Championship only series. The winner of this series will take home 50% of the monetary prize pool, that's $200, and they will also be given free entry to any paid entry NXTGEN Racing Championship in 2022, and that prize sticks with all of our prize winners. It just depends then where you place in the the series in the top 5 as to how much money you will take from that prize pool. Second will take home 30% of the prize pool, that equates to $120. Third will take home 15% or $60. Fourth will take home 5% or $20, which was the entry fee, so they essentially get all their racing experience back for free. And then fifth will not get any monetary reward, but will get free entry to any paid entry Next Gen Racing event in 2022, already a championship. Now, as for our drivers, you're probably thinking at this point, well, how many drivers have signed up and who are we expected to see out of the circuit? Well, we had such a demand that in the end we actually had to say to some drivers, well, you can be a reserve, but you won't be able to come to the circuit straight away. That is how popular the sign-up is. And we have 50 entrants, as we have been informed prior to tonight's proceedings. And we can see one of two here. We're going to take you through our first 25 drivers here, and you can see the variety of cars on offer. We've got returnees such as Andre Jacqueline, Harry Phillips, Rainer Effenstedt, Emil Blaine. We've got Walter Lux as well, Marcus Fox. We could go on and name them all. We could go through. But we've also got a lot of newcomers here as well. And you can already see some newcomers such as Mike Crute, for example. We've also got Matteo Morano. We've also got we've got the returnee of Lucas Seedor. Before I get too far ahead of myself, we've also there got Mattia Sevalone. And you can see the variety of cars being picked. A lot of Ferraris being picked by our drivers in the first 25 of our 50. And as we do come over to part 2 of our driver list here, you can see we've got some more returnees on this list, but also plenty of new names. New names including Tinko van der Velde. We've also got Artem Abakumov, and then we can also see Dennis DeMarco. But we've also got some big hitting returnee names as well. And one of them right there stands out on the right-hand side, midway down, and that is Andres Mesa, the Spaniard who returns, our championship winner in Season 2 of the GT3 Championship. He returns in the Aston Martin Racing V8 Vantage. And as some of you may have seen on the previous slide, we've also got the returnee of the runner-up of the Season 2, and that was, of course, Harry Phillips, who will be bringing the Bentley Continental once again. But focusing on the names here, you can see the return of Chris Zoiger there in the Porsche 911R, and he is returning, and he was, of course, one of our runners-up in Season 1 of the GT3 Championship, in the European GT3 Championship. And we've also got the returnee, although he's not listed on here, he was on the previous slide, of Wes Field, our championship winner in Season 1. So we've got championship winners and runners-up coming back, but then we've also got even more newcomers here. We've also got Ivan Shematinsky in the Bentley Continental, Alexei Yujeyov, and the Ferrari 488 Evo, and I'm sure I'm butchering some names already, but plenty of names here. Memorable ones that are coming back after multiple seasons, and newcomers as well. Many of you will know them, of course, from other series held on Assetto Corsa Competition. We have got some major names here as well, some top split drivers from series as hosted by, say, SRO, for example, as I've been informed, and other major series as hosted on the SimGrid platforms. We've got a huge variety of drivers, and it could not be more intense going into this season. But going from our drivers list then to the circuit, we are of course at Suzuka International Racing Course. And as shown on the circuit map here, provided to us by Will Pittenger from wikipedia.org, this circuit consists of 18 corners, and it's been used in this configuration by multiple series, whether it be the GT World Championships or alternatively Formula 1 or internal series within Japan such as Super GT. Consisted of 18 corners, 4 very unique sectors, the first and second sector all being about handling performance and trail braking performance. The third and fourth sector more being about acceleration, outer corners and straight line acceleration up to top speed. It's in the Suzuka region of Japan, in the Mie Prefecture to be precise, and this circuit consisted of a layout which extends to 5.8 kilometres. It is a long circuit with lap times, the fastest lap times coming in at just under 2 minutes, and as a result this will be a major test of our drivers' abilities. They will have to go through everything with their electric cars in this round. This circuit does not prefer one particular type of car or one particular type of setup. It is a case that if you set the car up for one particular thing, whilst it may work well in one or two sectors, it will be compromised in other sectors. It's finding the right balance as a driver and with the car you've chosen, which is going to be ever so critical. Remember, our drivers are locked into their car choices. They cannot change car over the course of the season. And speaking of rules, because we started to go on to them, here are some simplified rules for you. Our general rule is that the balance of performance variant used for all the cars featured in this series shall be the base 2019 variant, as applies to the Intercontinental circuits and the Assetto Corsa Competition as part of that DLC. So we'll be running the 2019 variant, not the 2020 variant, so there will be a slight difference compared to what we saw in the European GT3 Championship Season 2. On top of that, with regards to the race itself, there are 2 mandatory pit stops. That's right, because the race is now 90 minutes long, we have 2 mandatory pit stops, not the 1. And our drivers must, in the pit window, take on fuel. And as I'm to understand it, they must take on fuel in both of the pit stops, and it's 1 litre minimum. It may actually just be over the course of the 2 pit stops take on that 1 litre of fuel, but that will be clarified by our racing organiser, our administrator, during the driver's briefing. That's still to be confirmed. And as for the pit window itself, there is no defined pit window, so drivers may choose to pit when they want to, and this is critical on the strategy. We saw how important that absence of a defined pit window was in Season 2 of the European GT3 Championship, with some miraculous drives, particularly the most notable one perhaps being by Marcus Fox at Alton Park, which saw him finish right up there on the podium through some smart strategy and going the longest of everybody. But on top of that, you'll notice that there is no mandatory requirement for a tyre change. Changing tyres is entirely optional over the course of the race, and that means we may see some drivers try to do the entirety of the race on a single set of tyres, and none more so. Of course, many of you remember Harry Phillips in the season finale of European GT3 Season 2, who managed to do the entirety of the 2-hour Super Endurance at the Nürburgring on a single set of wet tyres, which was a phenomenal achievement and led to him finishing second and confirming his runner-up spot in that championship. Now, we are waiting for the driver briefing, which will be occurring in approximately 14 minutes. But whilst we are waiting for that driver briefing, it's only appropriate that we head to the live pictures right now, because we do still have that 14 minutes. And let's bring you some of the onboards of the drivers and also begin to introduce our drivers, not necessarily one by one, because we have got plenty here. And as I say, with regards to the number attending tonight, out of our 50 drivers expected to show, we have got a grand total of 48 here so far. So we pretty much got a full house, and we start off the camera focused on Andres Mesa, of course, the Spaniard returning from his glory in Season 2, our championship winner. But we look from him to another championship winner, and we can see Vez Field here parked in the pits right now in the Porsche 911, and Vez racing for the Intruder Racing team this time round. He's joined them, and he's racing alongside Team ITR, and we've got multiple ITR drivers out there. You're also going to see Gellin, and also, I believe, unless I'm wrong, we've got also one more of the ITR drivers who's going to be out on circuit, and we will find him for you as soon as we possibly can, and also get his name in mind. It's Leo Boulet, who is one of the other ITR drivers, and we can see Boulet here making his way around the circuit. As we see Emil Blaine, they're getting it very wrong through turn number 2 on the exit, but it's the case that Leo Boulet right now, Boulet from France, who's in the McLaren 720S as he makes his way through the S's here and up through turn number 7 to complete Sector 1. But already that gives you a flavour. If we've got ITR returning, who else have we got coming to this season? Well, as we continue to look around here, we take a look in the chat, we can see we have got already multiple of you saying hello and also saying who you're supporting. We can see we've got Trond Överland there in the YouTube chat who's saying hello. We've got also Governor ITR, who is the governor behind the Intruder Racing team, of course. He is, I believe, he's the manager and the brains behind the operation. Correct me if I'm wrong, Governor. And also he's been very helpful in helping us get some things sorted in previous seasons where we had technical issues. So we do love Governor, we do indeed. As we can see him in the Twitch chat. We've also there got Ironed Up 92, who is cheering on Mike Crute. Now, Mike Crute, if you're looking for the slow and steady racing driver, here he is as part of SAS Racing. Although it's probably not too clear where he is in this lollygaggle of cars right now, but as we look to the helicam there, you can see the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo of Mike Crute for SAS Racing. And I actually had the opportunity to catch up with Mike in preparation for tonight. He was walking down the pit lane towards his car, and he was taking it quite casually in the final practice session, in the build up to this session, in fact, as he was just making his way to the car. And what he had to say to me, and I asked all the drivers I could catch 3 questions, which was their goals for the season, why they chose the car they're running, and also their feelings for Suzuka. And what Mike was saying to me is that judging the times that he's been putting in the pre-season practice versus the top guys, he's certainly not expected to be up the front, but he's going to take into account the fact that he's new, so he's a relative newcomer. And you can see that there, by the way, with regards to the red tag against his door number there, the 27 with the red background to it, that amplifies, I believe, that the driver is effectively in the AM class overall as rated on Assetto Corsa Competitione. If they've got a silver background, meanwhile, such as Nesta Magia there, you can see in P44, that means they are Pro-Am, and in the white, that means they are Pros. So Crute has literally thrown himself in at the deep end and will be looking to do everything he can, and that's what he was saying to me in the catch-up I had with him, is that it's the case he hasn't had too much experience with Assetto Corsa Competition, so he's just hoping to try and get into the top half. And will that be reasonable? Absolutely no idea. Ask me next week, so I'll catch up with Mike definitely in a week's time and see how it all went. But he's going to look to learn from the opening round and try to improve over the course of the season. And he went with the Ferrari because he enjoys the Ferrari. He's had good fun with it when trying to get to grips with the simulator, and he hasn't done too much testing with any of the other cars, and as it's his first competitive season, he thought he'd pick the one he fancied and see where he'd go with it. And as for Suzuka, he does love Suzuka, but Suzuka does not love him, and we have seen that a number of times where Crew has been involved in other series on other simulators such as Gran Turismo Sport, where he's had good pace at Suzuka, but the circuit has always bitten him in the backside and nipped him in the ankles when he's been going very fast. Will it come back to hit him today? And he's tempering his expectations as a result for the opening round, but he does expect it to be a good challenge at a great track, and there are places to overtake, so who knows what he'll be able to do. He's just going to have to keep his focus and keep his head down. But as we look away from Crew to Lee King Majid right now, as he makes his way all the way down here, and the AKM Racing UK driver here in the Bentley Continental as he comes on round, and we can see that our cameraman getting a little bit disorientated by the figure of 8 overlap there, as we see Majid making his way into the hairpin, the turn 11 hairpin right now, as we look a little bit closer towards the car. The Bentley driver making his way on through and just pushing around through turn 12 and heading up towards what is turn number 13. He does have the roaring black McLaren 720S behind him there, and we're trying to identify who that is. I'm sure we'll find them in a brief word. I believe that might be Effenstedt who is behind him, although we will check that very shortly for you. Effenstedt is in the pits right now in the white McLaren, and I do believe we may have some slight livery issues with some of our drivers here. Their livery's not loading properly, which if so, by the way, we will fix those issues, so do feel free to point them out if you do see the issues with the street site, and we'll get them fixed for next time. Technical issues always do come up on the live show, but we're going to press on all the same. As you see, Effenstedt parked up here and currently on the jacks as the team are doing work on the car. Now, what Rainer was saying to me, of course, returning from Season 2, he was saying to me is that he can't wait to race again, and his goal is that he's going to be nearer to the top guys this time round. At the European Championship, he didn't make many mistakes, but he just was not fast enough in his own opinion, and he hopes to improve on that side in terms of overall pace. But given the competition here and how competitive it is in terms of the drivers and also the circuits, he's expecting that he's going to do his best here, and he does want to beat his team colleague, and I believe that is Walter Lux's colleague, who will be out on circuit in the Ferrari. But it's the case that for Effenstedt, he reckons that his teammate Lux is a very good driver, and it's only going to be through consistency that he can beat his teammate. As for why he picked the McLaren, he does enjoy driving the McLaren. We did see him enjoy it, of course, in Season 2 of the European Championship. And as for Suzuka, he finds it a difficult circuit to drive, but a fun circuit. Had to change his location recently, however, due to his flatmate, and I'm talking about in real life here, due to his flatmate succumbing to COVID-19 in terms of picking up COVID-19. So as a result, he hasn't had too much time to practice, and he's hoping his internet connectivity is stable. So fingers crossed, of course, for Effenstedt, and I'm sure many of you will be putting your fingers crossed right now for him that he doesn't have any connectivity issues, as we, of course, hop to his teammate of Lux as we just try to find him out on circuit. And, well, at the moment, I can't quite see Lux on out there, so we'll try and find Lux a little bit later on for you, ladies and gentlemen. So we have got a whole rostrum of drivers here, so it may be the case that it takes us some time to find individuals, as we see Alexei Yugov here in the Armamentario red machine here, and racing for the Armamentario red team. And it's the case that it's not just him, he's got a whole rostrum of teammates including himself. They've got a team of 5 drivers entering today, as he parks himself back in the pits right now, and he's in the Ferrari 488. It is the case you're looking out for the following drivers. Of course, the number 22 driver of Yugov, we've also got there Artem Abakumov in the Mercedes Evo. He'll be in the number 11 car. We've got the number 555 of Pavel Pushkarev in the Ferrari. We've also got Alexander... Well, goodness me, I am getting my test of dialect today. It is the case of Alexander Shashinov in the Ferrari, and we've also got Alex Kopsov in the Aston Martin Racing Vantage V8. But having the chance to catch up with Yugov in particular, it was the case that we were saying is that his main goal and his team's main goal is to enter this championship when multiple other international community championships and find new collaborations, friends, as they are originally from the Assetto Corsa Competitione Russian-speaking community and have only just recently started to compete internationally. So we've got the Russian drivers here making their way, or the Russian-speaking drivers, I should say, as he makes his way through turn 2 here, and they are looking to make friends across the continents of the world, and that's great to hear. And they're hoping to be able to fight for podiums, at least 3 of the team. So when we're talking about the 3 drivers in particular here, we're referring to Kopsov, also we've got Shashinov, and last but not least, the Pushkarev, who in previous months mainly competed in the AOR Championship in the top split, and also the SimGrid Endurance Season 3 and Season 4 and VCO World Cup. And also it's the case that meanwhile forward is Abakumov and also Yujov here, they're saying that they're more amateur racers or mediocre racers, but they're looking to improve. And their picks of cars are going for a mixture of pace and stability for the calendar here, and they're hoping they're not mistaken. However, the new upcoming patch that's due to release tomorrow, update 1.8, which could see some major physics changes and changes to the tyre model, could be a major spanner in the works for everyone. Indeed, the team recognise that. As for Suzuka itself, especially the corner 130R, it is a tricky circuit, but they're positive about the race and they're happy to be in the company of all the drivers here, and they wish everyone the best luck and salute everyone. Indeed, wish for some fantastic racing. That's great to hear, of course, as we see it right now. Yujov, sorry, I'm going to completely butcher his surname even more over the course of tonight, but Uge. Right, we're going to give up on saying that one very quickly. Ugayev making his way down towards what is 130R right now. And then as we continue to look around, we're looking to his teammates right now of Kopsov, who I believe is somewhere out of the circuit right now. But as I say, it's a case of our cameramen are just trying to find the drivers, and there is Kopsov, in particular the Russian driver, just parked in the pits right now in the Aston Martin Vantage, of course. And then we've also got Alexander Shashinov here, who is also parked in the pits right now. You can't quite see him, but as we get the helicam, fortunately our helicam is just over the top right now, you can see the Ferrari just parked up there and raring to go. And we've also got, of course, the driver of Abakumov, and I believe Abakumov right now making his way around on circuit, unless I'm very much mistaken. And indeed, there he is going across that timeline in the Mercedes GT3 Evo as he comes all the way down to turn 1 as he roars on down there into the tricky right-hander. Just under 4 minutes to go until the driver's briefing, but already bringing some thoughts there. And as we check in with you guys and girls in the chat once more here, we can also see what is there as well as ironed up. We've also MGK8 in the YouTube chat saying, if Harry does well, I help to the setup. If he struggles, I lay zero claim to the tune. Now the question is, MGK, are you referring to Harry Spears or are you referring to Harry Phillips? Because Harry Spears right now parked in the pit and just waiting to go. He's right down towards the end of our paddock in the Mercedes AMG Team Good Smile machine there, Spears, and he is the fastest driver in this practice session currently, as we do get a slight bit of lag there, as I believe a driver was just joining, and we have had another driver join quite recently. I think everybody trying to get their way on in as we are just waiting to go racing. We've also got Sobergrade there and Paul, and also a couple of the other SAS guys in the Twitch chat. I believe we've also got Zeronic in Twitch as we say hello to you guys. We've got Next Gen Ultra, that is of course our organiser of Kevin Smith, saying some fast guys in this championship in the YouTube chat. This will be a cracking battle for round 1. We've also got Hosey there saying go number 999, and that is Krivik. And let's just try and find the number 999 driver for you. And here he is, Christian Krivik, as he's currently parked in the pits for Dragons Esport and waiting to go. Of course, we're looking forward to seeing what he can do. And we can also see there Magia Nesta, who in the Twitch chat is saying hello. And indeed, we have got the return of Magia from Season 2 of the European GT3 Championship. And I had the chance to catch up with Magia in the build-up to tonight. And what you're saying to me as we try to find the driver with just a couple minutes to go before we do go racing is what he was saying to me is that he's going to try and reach the top 66%. He's going to try and finish in the top third of the championship over the course of this. Hasn't been able to practice or set up the car too much, but hoping for a good race and maybe some good battles. Well, we're right there with you, Mr. Aston Martin driver from Ektemo Rasket Racing, as he makes his way out of the hairpin. We close the camera down a little bit more closely as we see Emil Blaine behind him, and the Danishman returning to the series. Of course, Emil Blaine, whilst he was not necessarily the fastest over the course of the Season 2 of the European GT3, he was in the end awarded the most improved driver over the course of the season for a fantastic chain of results over the course of it in the NRT and Nordic Racing Team machine as he makes his way there through Spoon. That is turn 14, the second part of Spoon, and as he makes his way down towards 130R right now. I did have the chance to catch up with Blaine briefly in the build-up to tonight's proceedings. Well, I say briefly, in fact, it was quite a nice long conversation. His goal for this season was, well, last season it was a lot of trial and error and figuring out strengths and weaknesses, so he's going into this season with a lot more confidence, and he feels his biggest strength is his consistency, and he'll try to capitalise on this over the course of the season, although he expects, because the grid is so stacked with some high performers, it could be a major challenge, and he'll be targeting a top 20 in the standings when all is said and done, with perhaps 1 or 2 top 10 finishes. He's picked the Aston Martin, and the reason reason for that is he absolutely loves the car. He considers it to be the sexiest car there is, and he's made his livery even sexier. And I do believe we may be experiencing some issues with his livery coming on through, which if so, we will get those fixed a little bit later on over the course of the season. And as for how he's feeling ahead of Suzuka, he considers it to be a hell of a track and a wonderful flow through the first sector and a spectacular 130R. Taking the curves he feels will be somewhat of a deciding factor regarding both quali and the race because of the speed you've got to carry through them, and he doesn't feel he's quite mastered them as of yet. But as everybody now makes their way into the pits, we're going to sneak into that driver's briefing room and listen in. As I believe very shortly we are going to get a word from our NXTGEN Racing ACC GT3 organiser. That is, of course, Kevin Smith. We're going to hear the lovely tones and see what is going to happen. And we are hearing at the moment that Waterlux is trying to join the server, but unfortunately...
Fortunately.
Good job. Hey.
But at the moment we are hearing that Waterlux is trying to join the server, but experiencing some slight issues with joining.
Hello, such.
We are just hearing at the moment that because
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to round one of the championship as we head to Suzuka. We are expecting the weather tonight to be cloudy or clear. We are not expecting any rain so far. In regards to pit stops, there's 2 mandatory pit stops to be made. There is no pit window, so you can take them whenever you feel like it during the 90 minutes. Tyre change is optional. The only requirement we have is you take a minimum of 1 litre of fuel per pit stop. Tyre strategy is entirely up to yourself. In regards to pit entry and pit exit, please remain behind the white line. It is a fast straight as drivers come down into turn 1. We don't want anyone pulling out before the pit lane ends and causing a collision. Pit entry as well, if you could hold a nice tight line into the pit lane, that would be brilliant to allow the drivers around you safely when making your pit stops. We have got live shooting as well tonight, guys. The penalties will come up in the server under Chris Humphrey's name due to a late change in stewards we have tonight, and we have managed to set it up as race control. That'll be set up for round 2, of course, as we move forwards. And 15 minutes for qualifying. There will be a 5 minutes before the race starts, so you can adjust setups, tyre temperatures, stuff like that, and of course give our commentator time to run down the grid. And I believe that is it, everyone. If anyone has any questions, please put them in the general chat and we'll get these answered as soon as possible. If not, feel free to leave the room, and good luck, guys. We'll forward to the race in 2 minutes.
So just hearing there from Kevin Smith, I believe there may be 1 or 2 questions coming in, so we're just waiting to see what those questions are. So the question was, are we allowed to use return to garage during the qualifying? And I believe this is going to get answered very shortly. And there's also a question of 2 mandatory pit stops.
Yeah, I'll chat.
We're actually just going to hop to the return to the commentary box whilst those questions are being answered via text. I think they're being answered via direct messages. Apologies for a little bit of confusion with regards to the voices in the driver's briefing room. Normally it's all muted, but unfortunately I think I've given our drivers a bit of an earful of the commentary box whilst we're waiting. So I think there's a little bit of pre-race comedy there for some of the guys. But no return to garage is to be used during qualifying unless the car is unsafe to drive on the circuit. And there are 2 mandatory pit stops. That has been confirmed. So that means now, ladies and gentlemen, as we return to your live pictures. Everybody parked in the pits right now. We will be good to go very shortly. And we talked about him earlier. Here is Walter Lux. He has made it to the circuit in the end, and he will be in the Ferrari machine as he looks ready to go racing in the 2G Racing Esport machine alongside his teammate Verena Effenstedt, of course. Lux going to the Ferrari from the McLaren, and will shortly be bringing you why he made that change and what his thoughts were in the build-up to tonight. As we can see in the chat there, in the YouTube chat, MJK8 saying about Harry Phillips, confirming that he's saying with regards to supported and working with Harry Phillips and denying all knowledge and existence of the idea of working with Harry Phillips if it doesn't work out for the Britain from Wild Things Racing tonight, as we now just wait for all of our drivers to go away, as we do seem to have a number of liveries that are not loading at this moment, which is very unfortunate, but we will have to get those fixed after tonight's show. So apologies for that if some of the liveries are not what you're expecting, ladies and gentlemen, but I'm making a note of those as we go, and I'll definitely get those fixed for you as we go along. You can also see there in the chat, Simman14 saying go Krivik, and we've also got Tom Spot as well in the YouTube chat, so both Simman and Tom Spot cheering on Krivik in the YouTube chat, which is fantastic to hear, and we are just waiting for that turnover of the server, and there it is, ladies and gentlemen, we are now good to go for qualifying. As all our drivers make their way out of the pits then and head on to the opening qualifying session of the season. Now, of course, the big challenge for all of our drivers will be getting used to the fact we've got so many cars out on circuit, plus also the idea of getting those qualifying times in as early as possible. And as they all make their way on round right now, we just briefly catch up with regards to Walter Lux. So what did Lux have to say to us in the build-up to tonight? Well, the one thing he was saying to us was the fact that last season there were some good races for him, especially the last couple of races, but there were also many mistakes. Quite angry about the traction control situation, which he turned off in one of the races, and he saw that go completely wrong as a result. And also the main goal is to have a clean season without bad setup decisions, where he put a bad setup on the car at Silverstone in the McLaren 720S, and it did not work out. Disconnects as well plagued him, and lap 1 incidents such as that of Brands Hatch, which saw him drop down the field like a stone. On top of that, because there's so many fast drivers in this, in his opinion, he's consigned himself to a top 10 finish in the series, which would be a great achievement for him. So that will be his target, finishing in the top 10 overall. On top of that, he found that the last season the McLaren was quite a new car for him, and he thinks it's a great car, but a little bit of a different driving style is needed to extract the most out of it. So he's gone to the Ferrari because he likes a mid-engine rear-wheel drive car, and whilst he was never happy with the 488 GT3 and he never tried the Evo, after some testing with the Evo edition of it, he thought the Ferrari suits his driving style quite well. And I can tell you it's a very nice car to drive, and recently had the opportunity to drive one myself on the sim. A very comfortable car to drive. You have to work very hard to get the most out of it, but for a overall car, it's a good beginner's choice. If you're a rookie like myself, I've started my career recently, but enough about me. We come back to, of course, Mr. Lux, and the one thing he was saying with regards to Suzuka, it's one of his favourite tracks, but there's so many corners, and he thinks a qualifying lap without mistakes is very unlikely for him, as he tries to get some temperature in the tyres there and makes his way on round. But as he makes his way on through, we just take a little bit of a look further through, and we jump on board here with Harry Spears as he takes us around for the opening lap of this qualifying session for him. So as he makes his way across that timeline, the Briton charges down towards turn 1 here, completely flat out going up to top gear and looking for his brake marker. The 50 metre on the board and left, and trail brakes into the apex of turn 1, but the front end of the car quite understeery there as he finally brings it through turn 2, but goes a bit wide of apex. Now making his way up into the S's here through turn 3, lifting off the throttle and then coming down a little bit on the brakes here through turn 4, and now charging up into turn 5, into left-hander here, balancing the car on the throttle to keep a nice tight line into turn 6 and keeping it close to the apex curb here so he can stamp on the throttle and make his way through turn 7. A bit compromised there by a Ferrari that was going a bit slow, but it's moved out the way as best it could, and as he emerges through 7, he now charges into sector 2 with the commencement of the Degners. Degner 1 coming up at turn 8, braking that 50 board down 1 gear and attacking that apex curb. You can see the car bouncing off the apex, and built this Mercedes for running over the curbs. It's a very kind car to the curbs. He comes out of Degner 2 there and now makes his way for the right and Kinker 10 into the turn 11 hairpin. The slightest corner on the circuit, coming all the way down through the gears, and a very aggressive line down to braking. You can see how he pointed the car towards the apex and used engine braking to get the car stopped, as he now goes flat out through turn 12, staying as far to the right as possible here and keeping the car nicely nestled in to the right hand side, so that way he's set up for a spoon curve, which will be the double left hand sequence, starting with turn 15, braking into the left hander here, trail braking over the apex, so that way it sets him up nicely for the outside to inside line here into 14, and as he gets on the throttle, as he completes the apex point, he now makes his way out, running wide on the curve there, as you're allowed to do so, and as he charges all the way out towards 130R, he's completed 3 sectors. It's now the last sector remains, starting off with the fastest corner on the circuit, 130R, the left-hander here, as he makes his way in. full committal there, with a little bit of a lift of the throttle, but as he now comes down to the heavy braking zone for Casio Triangle Chicane, turns 16 through to 18 here. The right, left, right combination, going right over the apex of 16, doing the same as well on the curve of 17, now charging for the right-hander of turn number 18, flat out here to complete the lap and stays to left here, not happy with the lap he's just done, but it is his opening lap coming in as he crosses that timeline in the end. And what's it going to be from Spears? It is going to be a 58.494, but I think him running wide into turn 1 has cost him the lap time. It's been an invalidated lap, but that was a lap from the Briton there as he now makes his way around onto another flying lap. But as the times are coming in, we can see Luke Whitehead right now taking a 58.050 in the opening portion of this qualifying session in the Porsche 911 here for what is the PPR Esports machine. And as he makes his way now up into the left-hander at turn 7, we expect the Porsche to be very strong here, particularly in qualifying with what is the mid-engine rear-wheel drive layout, with that engine very far to the rear of the car. And we know with the 2019 BOP, based on season 1 of the European GT3 Series, just how strong the Porsche was when it was in the zone, but a very tricky car to balance in terms of that tyre wear in the race, and we're expecting this car to be quite a handful in the feature race compared to the qualifying session. But Whitehead there, and we can see our first 57 has just come in, and that's George Boothby, who's made his 57 and is flashing lights there to tell a Porsche in front of him to move out of the way. It's a 57.984, and we did see a good number of 57s in the final practice session ahead of qualifying, so we are expecting more of those times to come on in as time goes on. As our drivers continue to make their way around the circuit right now, it is the case that Boothby just keeping everything together as he makes his way through at the turn 11 hairpin. Meanwhile, a little bit further back right now, we've got Ivan Shematinsky making his way on through as well, and in the S&P Racing Esports Bentley here as he makes his way through the right-hander of 12 and up towards 13 as he comes into that heavy braking zone. The number 81 car here looking very composed at this point. Currently P11 provisional on what is a lap of a 1:59.370. Quite a delta between himself and pole right now as more lap times are coming in, but we are expecting there to be quite a gap between our top lap and also our bottommost lap, given the differences not in terms of driver skill per se, but the skill range that we have over the group of drivers here, as we see Shematinsky making his way down the order now into P14 on this current lap, as pole position is now retaken by Luke Whitehead, but then it goes to Harry Spears on a 57.759. Those lap times are coming in quickly as we see Shematinsky making his way across the line here. Can he promote himself from P16? He comes all the way down here towards the timing line, and I think it's going to be the case that it may be enough to get him further up. No, it is enough. It stays P16. In fact, he does with a 1:59.307, so he does improve by just under a tenth, but it's not enough to move him anywhere as he is now matched with the lap of Konstantin Soldatov as he makes his way down towards complete a lap right now, the Russian in the M2 competition machine, as he comes rip-roaring down there. And you see pulling over here now, I think he might be looking to park up the car and return to the garage, and he does so. I think the stewards may frown on that one a little bit just because he didn't drive into the garage, but that's for the stewards to decide on, as we see where it's the case that right now Waterluck's making his way through turn number 3, 4 and up into 5 here as all of our drivers come rip-roaring through once again. But how are some of our other drivers getting on, you may be asking at this point? Well, Vesfield right now has yet to put an indicative lap, but he's now coming across that timeline. Surely he's going to get a lap that puts him quite far at the order, up to P15 here for the Swiss driver as he makes his way down into turns 1 and 2 for the Intruder Racing team right now. And speaking of the Intruders, I did have the opportunity not to catch up with Vez himself, but I did have the opportunity to speak to Kevin Gellin. And well, if you're wondering who Kevin Gellin is from Intruder Racing, well, there was a Kevin. It was Kevin Harrakonen. Well, in fact, that is Harrakonen now racing under his full and formal name of Kevin Gellin, as we just try to find the driver making his way around on the circuit right now. And if you give me a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen, we should be able to get him on camera, although it doesn't look as though we can. I don't think he's actually out on circuit right now, but if we do see him, we will let you know as soon as possible. In fact, yeah, he is, as we can find him now. He's all the way down in P46 right now, and he has yet to set an actual lap. But the Intruder Racing team driver saying to me, the number 723 driver in the Ferrari 488 a GT3 Evo. In the build-up to tonight, there's a lot of really good and well-known drivers here, so he's aiming for some good results. Maybe a podium on one of the races, but more importantly, good pace, and try to keep it clean with respect to driving. The Ferrari, why did he choose it? Well, it's the car he's enjoying the most at the moment. Not the best car on any track, but a really good car on all tracks. A bit of a jack of all trades, master of none, and sometimes that's always comfortable to go for. And with regards, to Suzuka, he's hoping for some rain, but we will see. He thinks his pace will be good on the dry. Well, we had confirmation. We are not expecting any rain today. Our ambient temperature, 15 degrees centigrade, and we've got a track temperature of 21 degrees and currently building as it is just going up to 10 past 1 in the afternoon in Japan. And as we can see here, again, making his way around through Spoon Curve and down towards 130R right now. The track is optimal. We've got clouds over as well, and quite a heavy wind building up as well. 5 km/h wind, but it's pushing, getting along, fortunately, here as the camera pans round to see him going to 130R here. So that will give him a little bit of a boost into 130R, but he's got to be careful, of course, because that may cause him to carry a bit too much speed up into the corner, but he nails it very nicely, and through Casio Triangle he goes right now with just under 6 minutes of this qualifying session remaining. And what will he be able to do to get himself up the order, of course, as he makes his way down through the final corner. Marcus Fox peels off into the pits, and our Ferrari driver here, is he able to get a time on the board as he crosses the line? It is going to be, it puts him P31 there on a 59.985, but probably not the lap he was perhaps looking for at this point in the qualifying session. But that battle for pole position is continuing, and I can tell you right now that the Yas Heat driver of George Boothby in the Porsche 911 here, as he makes his way through the right-hander of 10 and up into 11. This is phenomenal in terms of the lap time. He's set at 57.522 right now. It is 2.5 tenths clear of Harry Spears at this point in qualifying, and with only a third of the qualifying session left to go at this point, you can imagine now Boothby has really laid down a marker in terms of other drivers being able to match up. But as we just look to the bottom of our top 5, we can see it's the ITR driver of Leo Boulet, who is currently just being worked on in the car in the pits, and they'll be getting that car back out very shortly to go qualifying once again. And meanwhile, just outside the top 5, we have got Danila Cherepin here making his way down towards what is, I believe, coming up towards the hairpin right now. Indeed, just making his way on through there in the McLaren for SMP Racing Esports, as the Russian now makes his way through the right-hander of turn number 12 and comes roaring on through. We have got a few cones knocked about the circuit there. I think somebody's had a bit of a moment through turn number 12, but they've either gone off circuit and then jumped to garage, alternatively they've rejoined without trouble. We won't know about that, but you can see right now Cherepinin, I should say, I'm saying his name full, making his way through a Spoon Curve and heading down towards 130R at this point. I think the challenge for him at this point is the fact that he needs to try and get himself just a little bit further around up the field, because otherwise right now he'll be looking quite vulnerable for a drop down to the bottom end of the top 10 as he backs off the throttle there and lets some of the drivers behind through. And speaking of drivers coming on through right now, well, we can see coming across that timeline is DeMarco here as he crosses currently provisional P12 from the Team Bullers Esport team as he makes his way into turns 1 and 2. Got some traffic ahead of him right now. This has not worked out. He's currently P12 on what is a 158.674 as he makes his way through turn 3 and up into 4 once again here as he comes sweeping through the corners. A wonderful flying sequence, of course, around the Japanese circuit as he comes up through 5. But that traffic is really going to hurt him massively here as he makes his way through. And I do think that right now the best thing he could do is try to back off. Alternatively, scrap this lap, get past the traffic ahead of him, and then go once again. As you can see, that Porsche is right in his face right now, and that's not what you want on a qualifying lap here, because slipstream, whilst it's useful in the run down towards 130R, it's going to hurt you massively over the rest of the lap, as we see Emil Blaine there in the rear of your picture having some drivers come right up behind him. And I think it's Emil Blaine who has to run off the circuit there in your rear of your picture, because we have multiple drivers coming on through, but he's been able to dodge that issue as we continue to look down here. And we're hearing that Chris Zuga has had some difficulties with regards to what is his technical issues. He's going to try and rejoin the server, but we have lost one of our drivers as is, and I think we will be seeing him come back shortly. We'll wait and find out. But meanwhile, whilst this is all going on, we can see everybody now trying to get themselves set for that final qualifying lap build up. We've got Mike Crew here making his way through turn number 5 and into 6, and just ahead of him we do have a couple of cars, and behind him, so everyone trying to find that space out on the circuit. And meanwhile, looking a little bit further around here, we've got the other Dane, the NRT Nordic Racing Team driver, of course, Emil Blaine, joined by his teammate of Andreas Sursen here as he makes his way down through a Degner 1 in the Aston Martin Vantage V8 as well. And well, one of the things with regards to this one, I was catching up with Sursen in the build-up to tonight, is that his target over the course of the season was to be a top 25 driver and get better at sim racing. With almost a year of sim racing experience in the bag, he thinks there's a lot of improvement and plenty more to do as he makes his way off circuit there to let the traffic behind come on through. He picked the same car as Emil Blaine. They both worked together, talked about it, and believed that they could help one another with setups and strategies with the Aston Martin. And as for Suzuka, it's a fun circuit, but not his favourite, and it will be a challenge for him. Well, speaking of challenges right now, one driver who will know about challenges, particularly in qualifying, with his qualifying not going too well at this point in P28 right now, Marcus Fox in the Porsche 911, the Fox Sim Racing driver, running the same livery as last time, of course, reviving that livery. And as he makes his way out of 13 and down through 14, through Spoon and up towards 130, you can see there having a bit of a drag race with Mike crew, and in the end, I think Mike just lifting off the throttle a little bit and wanting to tuck in behind. Perhaps doing a little bit of observation there to see where Fox is gaining some time as they make their way through at the left-hander here. But as they come up towards the heavy braking zone, you can see the drivers spacing out right now to give one another breathing room, as Fox is on a lap as it currently stands, we believe, and we're just going to watch him coming through here. He's currently just over 2 seconds off of pole position right now. Can he get himself further up and try and get himself into that top 20 as he comes around to cross the timing line? I think it's going to be quite a way off of pole, but it could be an improvement as he's crossed there. It's not an improvement, so Fox still P28 and Lucas Seedorf P29 as it currently stands. But meanwhile, in that shootout for pole, I can tell you that it's still George Boothby who is leading by 2.5 tenths almost over Spears. Neither driver has improved since we last looked at them, and you're looking at our provisional pole man right now as he is on his penultimate lap. As we continue to look around the field, as everyone's now putting in their final qualifying laps, we can see here in P13, provisional P13 as it currently stands, although I think we just had a driver do a disappearing act on us, and it was Oleg Zobsov here, Zolobov, as I should say, as he makes his way up through turn 10 and up into 11, heavy on the brakes of the S&P Racing Esports driver as he comes through in the Aston Martin Vantage V8 here, P13, unlucky for some, but it is the case that right now he's 1.137 seconds off of pole, and he's matching what is the lap time of Matteo Morano, and Morano in the pits here for the SPQR Racing team. The Italian driver here will not be going out again, so it does mean that that's the best he can do is P12, and now we wait to see how it all comes down as we see Vasily Anufriev here, the Russian driver, making his way through turn 6 and up into 7 for the M2 competition team, and as he comes through that left-hander, we've got that wait time, of course, the carryover time right now for everyone to put in their final qualifying laps. We hear that Spears has crossed the timeline. He does not improve. What about Anufriev then? Can he improve as we see the ITR, the McLaren ITR of Leo Boulet there, parking off circuit and moving out of the way and jumping back to the garage? So a lot of drivers now coming into the pits, and we see that Danila Cherepinin has improved to a P6 there, 7 tenths off our leader, as more drivers are coming on around right now. We're just waiting to see how they all come to the end of this qualifying session in terms of their overall times. As we do see here, a little bit further up towards the end of the lap right now, Ivan Shematinsky, the S&P Racing Esports driver, on the offensive here through 130R and heading up towards what is the Casio Triangle chicane. He does have a car ahead of him that he could use a little bit of a tow there as he makes his way out of the final corner. I don't know how much this is going to help, but can he get himself from P20 to a little bit safer in the top 20? He comes to cross the timing line here, pulling over to the right to shorten the run to the timing line, and as he crosses, is it going to be an improvement? It is to P16. It is enough for improvement, and I think that will be enough to keep him safe within the top 10 rows as he now settles the car down. Meanwhile, we do have Mattia Vaca here making his way for Team Bowlers Esport coming into the pits, in fact, so he has abandoned this final lap, and as we've got more drivers coming on through right now, I believe Artem Abakumov is on what is essentially a cool-down lap. He's finished his session, but that does mean, ladies and gentlemen, that pole position goes to George Boothby in the end by 2.5 tenths. It's time to get ready for the race. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we now look to our grid here, and in terms of our grid order, well, it was a hotly contested qualifying session, but in the end, George Boothby taking pole by the best part of 2.3 attempts overall. And as we look inside the car right now with the man, he'll be thinking to himself that all he needs to do is nail the start and then try to make the break as we go for 90 minutes of racing, because it's one thing to start on pole, it's another thing to convert that pole position into a race win, and he will be all too aware of that over the course of the time period available. Meanwhile, alongside him on that front row is Harry Spears in the Mercedes AMG. Team Goodsmile here, and the Briton will also be looking to have a strong start as he makes his way underway onto the Suzuka circuit for 90 minutes of racing. And can he throw up a surprise with the AMG being surrounded by an army of Porsches? He's got Boothby ahead of him and alongside him effectively, and then behind him he has got Whitehead and also Raymond Mooney as we try to get the camera alongside, but unfortunately we can't, so we look to the helicam instead. But it's going to be Whitehead and Mooney on that second row, and then on the third row it's Leo Boulet and Danila Cherepin in the end. Then on the fourth row, it's Andres Mesa and Dylan Tan. And Dylan Tan having a very good qualifying session there in the Ferrari, our highest placed Ferrari out of all the Ferraris in this field. And we've got quite a few of the 488 GT3 Evos. And then on the fifth row, we've got Tinko van der Velde. And alongside him will be Vesfield. And they complete your top 10 there. Van der Velde being not our highest McLaren, but one of our strongest McLarens here. Boulay being the highest in P5. Vesfield in P10, of course, and then coming on to our sixth row, you've got Vasily Anufriev in P11. Alongside him will be Matteo Morano from SPQR Racing. And then on the seventh row, you've got Oleg Zolobov. Alongside him will be Dennis DeMarco in P14, who you can see here in the Ferrari in the centre of the camera. And then what is in the eighth row, we have Christian Nembrini. And then Brini here being in the Aston Martin V8 Vantage. Alongside him will be Ivan Shematinsky. Then on the ninth row, we've got Killian Ryan Meenan here, and Killian Ryan Meenan being one of the two Ryan Meenan brothers, alongside his brother, who's a little bit further down the order of Cormac Ryan Meenan. And I believe a little bit of trivia with regards to these guys, as we just look inside the car here. They are literally located in the same house right now on their sim racing rigs, sat side by side. So you can imagine there's going to be a lot of communication between the pair of them going into tonight. But it is the case that both drivers are looking to do their utmost here, and Killian being the younger of the two brothers, 26-year-old, and Cormac being the older of the two, 29 years old. And well, they're looking forward to a fantastic and clean season of racing. But as we look from his onboard to outside once again and continue to go down our order, line up on what is our 10th row, it's Giovanni Izzo and Konstantin Soldatov. Then on what is the 11th row, I should say, Alexander Shashinov, and alongside him will be Mattia Vaca. And then on what is the 12th row, we have Mattia Curvaloni, and alongside him will be Walter Lux, and it's the SPQR driver ahead of the TG Racing Esport driver. And then on what is row at number 13, we'll Christian Krivik, and alongside him will be Alexin Kopsov. And then on the 14th row, we were going to have Chris Suga, but I think Chris Suga is continuing to experience some technical issues. So as a result, in fact, we have, in the end, it is Cormac Ryan Meenan, and alongside him on the 14th row, Lucas Seedor here. And then we've got Mikhail Rattel, and alongside him will be Marcus Fox on the 15th row. Our 16th row consisting of Artem Abakumov, and alongside him Pavel Pushkarev. And then on what is the 17th row, Lee King McGee, and alongside him we Seal Pantera. And then on the 18th row is Kevin Gellin, the ITR driver, having a very difficult qualifying session by the looks of things, alongside him Marina Effenstedt. On what is the 19th row, we've got Benjamin Aseli and Harry Phillips. And Harry Phillips having a very poor qualifying session as well. And on the 20th row, we've got Luca Filippi and Alexei Yugiev. And then on what is the 21st row, we've got Maher Haritojo, and alongside him Andre Jacklin. And then on what is our 22nd row, we've got Trond Øvlund, and alongside him Andreas Sørensen. And then on what is our penultimate row, we've got Sanjin Blelik, and we've got alongside him Mike Root. And our last row, Nesta Magia and Emil Blaine rounding off the field. As we look back up to the front of our field right now, the timer coming down here, it is the case in 5 seconds we will be getting the racing underway for the season opener. And well, it'll be George Booby who takes us away for the opening warm-up lap here and the double file formation rolling start, as we see our Porsche driver makes his way off the line there, and all of our drivers itching to go racing, of course, and expecting some very close and tense action. I'm sure it may be a little bit tricky navigating turn 1 for the first time here with that heavy trail braking zone, but Booby will take us away, as we can see all of our drivers just pulling off the line here and starting to try and get some heat in the tyres. As we check in to the chat here, we can see what Jerry, race car driver. And well, it is the case as we continue to look down of Ivan Fornes here, down in P18, and we've got a massive super fan there in the YouTube chat for Fornes, and that is Lucino Wow in the YouTube chat, who says Fornes I love, and that's great to hear. And indeed, we'll give him a little bit of camera time here as he just makes his way around on the circuit right now as he comes through turn 2 and just trying to warm up the tyres right now. The Joker's E-Team, of course, driver making his way and just getting ready. And I'm sure at this point he'll be thinking to himself, how can I get the best possible result from what is effectively the 8th row of the grid, the 9th row of the grid, in fact, my apologies, getting my math a little bit wrong there. Well, he's just got to get his head down, and I expect it's going to be a bit clustered at the start, as we can see that track temperature has come down by a degree centigrade compared to qualifying, but still, I'm sure that track temperature is going to come up once the rubber really starts to get laid down, and we've got all of our cars, all 48 of our cars, rip-roaring around this circuit. As we look back to the exterior cameras right now, and we can see a little bit further down one of the drivers who really had a bad qualifying session and will now be looking to find a way to get through this one one, and it's going to be a tough one. It will be Harry Phillips starting down in P38, the Wild Things Racing driver, not having a good day at the office, as we also see GTI Davidez there in the YouTube chat saying Forza Mattia Vaca, and we'll look to him shortly. But Harry Phillips, what can he do from P38? Can he pull off a miracle here at Suzuka and get himself up the field? We will have to wait and see. He expected, when I had a brief chat to him in the build-up to tonight, that it was going to be a very tight field and a very, very difficult one for qualifying, particularly at Suzuka, but we will wait and see what the Bentley driver is able to do. If anybody can do it, he can definitely pull a result, as we see Mattia Vaca here in P22, of course, getting ready to go as well in the Bentley machine, as he just gradually makes his way up towards the chicane here. As all of our drivers now completed the first half of this warm-up lap, and of course it will be the case that as we get closer to the final sector, indeed running into the final sector, we will start to see all of our drivers stack up side by side for that double file manual rolling start. And as they all continue right now, a lot of drivers I think will be setting their expectations in terms of how they plan to start this race. Will some go on the offensive? Will some just be passive and look to try and keep it clean and avoid the incidents? If I was in their shoes, particularly in the midfield, such as drivers such as Mikel Rattel here for the Cosmos Racing team, I would just simply look at trying to stay out of trouble on the opening lap, because Suzuka Turn 1 is a very tight apex on Turn 1, the trail braking zone, and with over 40 cars here looking to make their way round, you can be sure that it only takes one driver to get it wrong and then everybody is going to have to worry about taking evasive action. But we are expecting our stewards to be quite firm if there is any contact and incidents at the start of the race, indeed much like they were over the preceding seasons of the European GT3 Championship. So it's not as though drivers will be able to get away with little bits of contact. A little bit of a door knock every so often may just get a caution, but any major instance, our stewards will be on it like a hawk. As we see right now, all of our drivers now starting to come together, as we see Boothby here close the pack up in preparation for going racing. And as we look to the helicam here, you can see everybody now starting to stack up, and it is the case that Boothby and Spears will be looking to go charging off and trying to break away from the field and then go fully racing afterwards as they make their way through Casio Triangle. And we wait for the rolling start to commence. And it's lights out and away we go for the season open of the Intercontinental Challenge Championship, and George Booby getting a good start here versus Harry Spears. They come roaring down into turn 1 for the first time of asking. Behind a little bit further we can see we've already got a driver off. That's why the Ferrari's going wide. I think that was Morano, as they all make their way now through the opening two corners. A bit further back here, it looks as though everybody just about making their way through. As we look further down the field here, and we can see in some situations we've got 3 wide towards the back of the field. I think that was Pushkarev in a 3 wide situation, as they now all come roaring through the S's side by side, and all of our drivers trying to gain an advantage over one another. And you can see Cebalone here in a battle with what is Vaca, and as he makes his way through, Vaca trying to get through from behind as they head Shidinov and also Marco there side by side as they're coming up through their hill, and as they make their way through the corners here, you can see it's a case that I think it's Cebalone there who's gained as a result, as we have lost one of our drivers who's gone a bit wide out of the corner and further back as they're all starting to rejoin. And our timing screens are being updated. We've got an Aston Martin there going a bit wide out of Degnan 1, but it rejoins side by side with one of the M2 racing machines, and as they continue to make their way all round, we now look back towards our leader here, who we can see as the camera pans down. We've got the ITR McLaren of Leo Boulay there getting it very wrong on the exit, or on the apex in fact of the hairpin. We've got a McLaren that's been knocked as a result, as that McLaren comes flying across the circuit here, and I think that McLaren is off circuit. Fortunately, nobody's getting involved. We've got a Ferrari that's spun at the hairpin as well, and we see the McLaren's well out of the way, and that's Tinko van der Velde there with the major moment as all of our drivers now make their way through, and that is so frustrating for van der Velde, who has just to wait now for that opportunity to rejoin, but he'll come all the way down the order as Shematinsky here makes the move on what is Nembrini for P13 as they come on through the corner. Oh, goodness me! And I think there was contact there, as it looks so mean, and for the FFS Racing team was collect as he tried to come out the corner, and as a result now he will have to get the car repaired most likely, as all our drivers make their way up towards 130R, and as they come charging on through here, it's the case that Morano in the Ferrari has made some ground already, but he's in a battle here with fielders looking to the inside into Casio, and as they come through the chicane here, it looks as though Matteo Morano is going to hold on for the time being, but he will be compromised into turn 1. So after one lap, it's George Booby leading by the best part of only a tenth of a second right now versus Spears, and Spears on the offensive as they go on to lap number 2 as they come on through here. There's no way through for Spears this time, but it's very close. Meanwhile, behind here, we've got Whitehead in P3, followed by Boulay in P4 as they make their way through turns 2 and into 3. Behind, we've got Sheriff in there in P5, Mooney in P6 meanwhile, and then Dylan Tan in what is P7 as he makes his way through. Andres Mesa in P8 coming on through, and then we've got Anufrinev in P9, followed by Morano in P10 as they all go charging up the hill once again. Morano here falling back from Anufrinev right now as they make their way through turn number 6. Behind him, you've got Vesfield in P11. He's under major please. He's dropped a position here. I believe he's dropped the position to what is Soldatov. So as a result, Soldatov in fact in P12 and Forner's in P11. So Field has dropped out. Our time screen's just updated with regards to that as they all make their way on through up towards what is Degner 1 once again as they come roaring through the corner. And behind Field in P14, you've got Shashinov right now, Alexander Shashinov. And in P15, you've got Kervalone in the position right now as he's making his way out of the Degner and heading up towards the hairpin as we ride on board here with the Italian as he tries to find a way to get into the top 10 and looks the inside here of what is Shishino as Shishino has a difficult run. It doesn't look as though it's going to be the case that the Italian can gain the ground as it's Ferrari versus Ferrari, and that's all about how they've got the car set up. As he comes up into Spoon Curve once again here, it's the situation whereby he's got to wait for that opportunity and just keep his cool as he looks to try and find a way past the driver ahead of him. But where can he do it? Of course, with the drivers still very closely packed together, and it will be the case that Shashinov will get the draft of the two drivers in front in the run up towards 130R. So he's going to have to think about that one as that's your top 15 covered, and outside the top 15, the best of the rest right now is Walter Lux, but he's under pressure from Izzo as Izzo looks to make the move on the outside into 130R. It's Ferrari versus Aston Martin. They go through, and Izzo goes all the way around the houses there, and you can see Ryan Mina now looking for the move here as he goes into the heavy braking zone, and Lux is going to be mobbed by two drivers as they make their way through. It's Ferrari versus Ferrari, and in the end it is Mina who looks to make the move, but Lux just about holds on there with just enough room afforded to him. As you can see behind now, the ITR car behind them, and that is Gelling trying to come through as Gelling has come up all the way from around the bottom of the order and he's coming charging on through as he makes his way into turn 1. Now he's going to make it 3 wide here versus Meenan, and also what is Lux, and Meenan backs out of it, and Lux goes a little bit deep under braking, and you can see Gelling really on the offensive as they make their way through turns 1 and 2 and now head up into 3, and Lux has to defend here into 3. This is getting very tricky right now because if Gelling gets this right, he's going to cost Lux a lot of time and essentially pull him away from the guys in front and be able to make the move up into the hairpin. It's a long run, of course, and they all start to stack over the top of one another as they come roaring through turn number 6 and up into 7 here, and as they go through the left-hander, Gelling gets it a little bit deep there, and Meenan tries to sneak his nose on the inside, but there's no way through. Meanwhile, Lucas Seedor here in the Porsche 911, switching to the Porsche for this season as he makes his way into Degner 1 here. He just has to watch the VRS satellite racing drivers. They all come through, and that's Marcus Fox behind, and Rattel even further back as we've got cars right now parked up, and I believe we have got a couple of cars that are essentially lifting off to let back Marcus through, and that's Abakumov in particular who has backed off as they all make their way on through the corners once again. They go through the left-hander of the hairpin, and as at this point we are hearing that Andrew Jacklin has got a drive-through penalty awarded from the stewards for contact on the opening lap, as I've come to understand it, and all our drivers come roaring on through once again. But we look back up towards our leaders as we've been looking in the midfield. Our leaders right now in a world of their own, our top 2 versus Boulay down in P3, as we can see George Booby here leading by 4 tenths of a second to 5 tenths of a second over Spears. But really the big contention point right now is Boulay versus Whitehead. Whitehead has lost the position off camera versus Boulay, and Boulay is really starting to try and make the break here as he makes his way on through the Casio Triangle chicane once again and comes roaring down the hill now to complete what for him is his 3rd lap of the circuit as they make their way into the 4th lap. And behind, Whitehead and Cherepin are holding back, as it is the case that Mooney has lost out in all of this. In fact, Mooney has lost out quite a bit as we're hearing that Ryan Meenan is into the pit, and as a result now he's going to fall a lap down, but he did have damage on the car as they make their way around once again. And as they come through turn 2, it is the case behind here. You can see how Raymond Mooney, the Scotsman, has really got that pressure building right now. The Porsche driver, he's currently holding on the Sim Racing Masterclass driver here as we ride on board and look back. He's got Tan and Andres Mesa behind him, both trying to find a way on through, and a little bit further back we've got Anufriev as well, who's trying to get into this fight for P6. But right now Mooney just simply holding his ground and using the handling characteristics of that Porsche to keep him safe in the opening sector at least, as the sweepers are where this car's going to be very strong with that direction change every so often. And as they make the way through turn number 7 up in towards the Degners right now, this is where Tan and Mesa can start to close up a little bit, as the Porsche may be a bit sensitive on curves. He goes a little bit deep there through Degner 1, almost going to the AstroTurf a bit too too much. And as they make the way out of Degner 2 right now, it does look as though Mooney's getting into the rhythm, as we're hearing that Pantera is just going to be letting him through very shortly as our camera pans round here. And as they make the way on through, we can see it's the case that Pantera is just holding wide as they now come on through, and he's got all that traffic to let through effectively, which is a very frustrating situation, but it's worked out for Mooney here. He's gained some time as a result of it. And meanwhile, a little bit further back, I can tell you it's the situation that right now Morano, as he comes roaring down through turn 12, and you can see in the rear view picture there, Vesfield battling with Soldotov as they make their way up into turn 12 and into 13. They go into Spoon Curve. It's the Aston Martin driver on the inside versus the Swiss on the outside here, and as they come on through the left-hander, it looks like Phil's going to try and look for a cutback or just simply get the momentum on exit here to be able to slipstream his way past down towards 130R, but we know how strong that Aston Martin is in a straight line here. It's got absolutely phenomenal acceleration as they make their way down towards 130R, and now it's the case. You can see Shashinov behind in the Ferrari is inching ever closer here as our three different manufactured cars all come on through 130R, three different drivers, three different types of car, and as they all come into the heavy braking zone here, nothing to decide between them right now other than the fact they're all absolutely blazing with the pace as they make their way around to complete this lap and go on to the next one. On to lap 5 they go, and you have to imagine at this point Phil's going to have one eye in his rearview mirror, one eye ahead of him, and how's he going to split his eyes as well to look for the braking marker? That's going to be the difficult challenge as he comes down towards turn 1 here. Now will he look to have to go defensive or go on the offensive? He does neither. All the drivers hold on for the time being as we look a little bit further down the order, and I can tell you that right now Sanjin Black is down, Blackick is down in P24 in what is the Bentley there, the esports racing zone machine, as they come across that timing line here, and he has got Pushkarev who's looking for the inside here into turn 1. He can't quite find it, but he was in tone of the move, I think, trying to intimidate the Croatian as they come through turn 2 and up towards 3. Ahead of them, however, we have got a bit of a battle building as we've got McLaren going wide there, and as we see all the drivers come through turns 4 and 5 and up into 6 very shortly, it is the case that right now Meenan holding off Fox, but behind them we've got Lucas Sidor who's under pressure from Rattel as Abakumov has had to let these guys on through, so that's why you saw 2 wide a moment ago at the rear of your, the front of your picture as they make their way on through turn number 7 and down towards 8 once again, and as they come charging on down through turn 7 and into 8. It's a situation right now where I think for Sidor, he's just got to simply keep his head down and try to now go after Fox, because at this point, with Rattel so close behind, and Rattel will want to capitalise on this, he could prove to be a thorn in his side as they make their way on through up towards the hairpin here. But ahead, you can see Fox really building that pressure onto Ryan Meenan right now as we do ride on board here with the Austrian driver as he comes out of turn number 11. But you can see how Meenan has had such an exit out of 11. He's pulled the best part of 3 tenths just on the exit section alone in terms of the traction, and as they make their way through 12 and up into 13 here, I think Fox at this point has got to be thinking about settling the race down. We know Fox can make the tyres go very long compared to most, at least from what we've been hearing down in the paddock, so wait to see if the Fox Sim Racing driver comes up with an inventive way in order to make those tyres work to his advantage and save himself time in the pit, because of course if you don't change tyres then you don't have to be up on the jacks compared to they're just putting fuel in the car. Now as we see our drivers all make their way down, we look a bit further down the order, and one driver who's gained quite considerably, he's up into P28, is Tronda Uveland, as the Norwegian driver from HRT makes his way down towards 130R here in the Mercedes. The next driver he'll be charging off is Effenstedt as he goes hunting after the McLaren driver here, and as he comes down to that heavy braking zone once again, you can see in the rear of the picture Surison there chasing after him, but he's the best part of 2.5 seconds back as we've got a Bentley going a little bit wrong there, and as a result, as they make their way out to the final corner, you can see it's the esports racing driver Sanjin Blekik here making his way down towards turn 1, but the problem is he's got Pushkarev who's now got the momentum, and Pushkarev on the inside here. Surely this is going to be a classic pass into 1, or are they going to make contact? No, they do not. It's the case that the Bentley driver just backs out of it and decides, you know what, it's not worth it at this time. But that does mean, of course, now the driver behind Haritojo is going to now be looking for that potential move here as he squirms from left to right behind, and as the camera pans round here, come on cameraman, get a move on. You can see he's looking for it, but he just cannot get close enough. The KRT driver, the Cosmos Racing Team driver, as they make their way through the S's, and this is costing him massively. You can see Effenstedt here getting ever closer. And I think at this point, it's one of those situations whereby as they make their way through turn 7 and up into 8, he's now got to have one eye in the rearview mirror, because that McLaren is going to be very fast through the Degners here, much like the Ferrari. But the difference will be, of course, that the Ferrari driver has got a massive Bentley in his way, and that boat is not going to go anywhere anytime soon as they come through Degner 2. And you can see as they make their way down here, all 3 drivers pretty much spaced out at this point in terms of nobody able to make an overtaking opportunity or sniff that overtake, but they will all come back together as it does look as though Blackett is really struggling to get the power down the exit of these low speed corners. He's got the torque in the low RPM band in that Bentley. We know how strong it is in the low RPM, the acceleration zones, but as soon as it gets towards the top end of its gearing, that's where it really feels the pain, and it's the case that Haritoja and Effenstedt will need to capitalise on that. But looking from them back up towards our leaders, here's a case to look at our two leaders here are making the breakaway. Boulay down in P3 still as they go on to lap number 6 here, but lap number 7 I should say. But you have to imagine at this point, could there be a bit of a strategic avenue here with the Heat driver and Spears behind him are both trying to run these cars on a bit lighter fuel. As you see, the Booby going a little bit deep into 2, and Spears is getting much closer every single time. This battle for the lead is going to go on for some time here, and Spears is really keeping that pressure on right now. He is relentless in staying with the leader, and he wants to try and get Booby to make a mistake, and the Heat driver is not giving in for the time being. But you can imagine if it does go wrong, then it will be a situation where the Mercedes driver behind will capitalise. But as they emerge from sector 1, that is the delta there. Porsche versus AMG is the case. The AMG about 3/10 slower through the S's by comparison, but now it's over the rest of the lap where the AMG power starts to shine on through as that V8 is applied more liberally versus the Porsche as they come out of the second Degner here, and you can see as they make the way up now with those curbs playing a much bigger factor here in terms of the ability to ride the curbs. This is where Spears gains. He can use the car more aggressively compared to Booby, who has to relax the car a bit more and be more sensitive. Behind, meanwhile, in the battle for P3, this is the sort of second pack, if you will. Got Boulay ahead of Whitehead and Cherepin, and as they're trying to hold on right now, Boulay just pressing on, and behind them you've got Mooney here who's making his way as the camera pans around him. Mooney in P6, the third pack. He has got Tan behind him, and Anufriev and Andres Mesa trying to close up as well, as this is from P6 to P9, and then completing our top 10 as they make the way on through. Once again, it is the case that we do have Morano, but we'll come back to the SPQR driver in a brief moment, as Mooney right now is looking a little bit vulnerable here to Tan as they come charging down towards 130R, and as they head into left-hander 130R, here's the situation right now where I think Tan's going to look for a move, but he's not going to actually commit to a move here, just trying to get the message through to Mooney. You may want to look in your left-hand mirror and forget about making your braking zone. Of course, these drivers professional in their caliber, and as a result they'll be aware of that. They're not just going to make mistakes by not seeing their braking zone unless it's the most intense of situations here, and we have only killed 14 minutes of this 90-minute race and still plenty more racing action to come. As we can see right now, all our leaders coming across that timing line once again, and as we look further down the order right now, Morano holding on, but looking at this battle for P6 here, we can see Tan looking for the move into turn 1. He's looking to the outside, he's forced Mooney onto the tight line, and Mooney's gone a little bit deep as the rear end steps out slightly, a little bit of oversteer there on the apex, and as they make the way through to an into 3 right now, this is what Mooney's not looking for, because now Tan can essentially be closer than he would normally be and take away the advantage of the Porsche to break away through what is the S's here, as behind you can see Anufriev here really starting to feel that pressure of Andres Mesa right now, and I think Andres Mesa has really built that car to run strongly through the S's. You can see the two Aston Martins, and it's almost as if the Russian's car compared to the Spaniard is like a brick through the S's, and the Spaniard is just on a mission to try and find his way through. But overtaking through the S's is very challenging at the best of times, and as we can see here, as they make their way into Degner 2 here, it's a case there's no way through for any of the drivers who are battling for these positions right now as they come roaring on through once again. Now, as they make their way into the hairpin here, we look a bit further down the order. And I can tell you, looking further down right now, we have got all the way down in P34. We've got Shematinsky right now, who's got that pressure of Vaca and Phillips behind him, as we see the three Bentleys all nose to tail here, and we'll definitely see them all coming on through. Of course, they're not racing for the same team. They all look the same. They are all in black liveries here. I can assure you that is a technical issue on our end. It is not. The drivers all running for the same liveries as they make their way through the S's here. But right now, I think the Bentley drivers really having a dark day down towards the bottom of the field and just trying to find a way to get back into the race as they make their way on round, and as they come through the corners right now, we look a bit further down the order, still all the way towards the bottom here, and we see Nestor Magia making his way through what is turn number 11 here, chasing after a number of drivers who are on the lead lap effectively right now. Magia, of course, involved in the instance earlier on, the Ictemo Rasket Racing driver here with the wounded car to jump to the pit, so it's not been a good day at the office. But speaking of going from bad days at the office to good days, we still do have George Booby leading right now as we look back to our leaders here going into turns 1 and 2 for the 9th time. But as they come on through here, it's a situation, they've got a bit of traffic ahead, and that's Andrew Jacklin who moves out the way immediately. And as they come through the left-hander of 3 and into 4 right now, it looks like this time Booby's had a much more composed run into the S's, and as a result can extract a bit more of a gap by comparison with what he did previously. But it is one of those situations right now where Spears may be calming the car down as well a little bit here. We're not expecting too unpredictable conditions by comparison with what we may have expected to see at Suzuka. We've got quite a cloudy sky but we're not expecting any rain or anything like that. So as a result here, I think it's the case that Spears right now maybe thinking, okay, I can run close to you, but it's a case I'm not going to put too much pressure on here. I need to think about the strategy at this point, because now that our drivers have gone beyond the opening 15-minute mark, now the strategic element starts to settle in a little bit more. Now they'll be starting to think about, how do I play the long game here versus the short-term game at the start of the race. And speaking of one driver right now who'll be hoping that the guys behind him are playing the long-term game here rather than the short-term game, it's Raymond Mooney, who right now in P6, you have to imagine, has got a lot of pressure building up on the back of his neck as they make their way through the hairpin here and come charging through turn at number 12 once again. And Mooney holding firm here as he makes his way through the right-hander at turn 12 and heads down towards 13. And as he comes roaring on through into the spoon curve right now, it's a situation where I think Tan has lost out a little bit. In fact, the gap's opened up to half a second. I think Tan might have needed to back the car off slightly just to cool things down, settle the brakes down, and then go hunting again very shortly. But speaking of hunting, I can tell you that right now the SPQR driver of Morano is not being given any relief. The Italian has got Fornes behind him, and it is the case as they make their way through. Ivan Fornes behind it is trying to charge. These two have been quite evenly met, and over the course of the racing so far, these two have broken away from P12 downwards and are right now contesting that P10 position. But I think they've reached a bit of an impasse, the pair of them, a bit of a stalemate, because we're seeing that Morano's much stronger through the corners, but as soon as they get onto those straights, of course, or those major acceleration zones, that's where Fornes is much stronger by comparison as they make their way through to complete another lap. And we see Abakumov into the pits, but he is the best part of a lap down. I'm wondering if that car has been boxed to retire. We know that Jack didn't have to drive through penalties. We look back up towards the leaders right now, and I believe we've just simply had a very close nip and tuck between Mooney and Tan, and they're still making their way on through in the sequence they were. But it was the case that Tan looked to move into turn one, but he couldn't quite find it in the end, and as a result is still behind. But Mooney feeling a huge amount of pressure on him right now as they make their way through the S's once again. And we ride on board with Dylan Tan here as he tries to find his way on past the Porsche ahead of him. Now what can Tan do, the Turkish driver? What can he do to get past? He seems to be in this situation right now. We can get close enough, but he can't quite get the move. Well, he's got to try and find a way of getting Mooney to make a mistake and overwork the Porsche, because how sensitive it is with regards to those tyre temperatures. As they make their way through the Degners here and up towards 10 and 11, it's one of those cases right now where Tan, of course, in the Ferrari, whilst it's a good overall car, what he won't want to do is push the car too hard early on, as he comes down very heavy on the brakes there into the hairpin. But I think what you can see is also the difference in the braking approach there, where Mooney much more gentle on the brakes and extending that braking zone to try and protect the tyres, in particular those front tyres, from overheating under braking, and also keep the car nice and stable so it's not coming loose at the rear. Whereas Tan's taking a much more aggressive approach to braking, really going hard on the anchors, and that is what's enabling Tan to close up massively. But now, of course, he makes his way out spoon there, a little bit of understeer there on the corner. You can see he's actually lost time as a result of that. He's lost a 10th as they make their way on through, and the only reason he's now closing back up, as well as the straight line acceleration here, is one of those situations whereby he's in the toe of the guy in front of him. But Anuferev right now has closed up massively because of this. Now, when I say massively, it's only 2 tenths, but Vasily right now behind will be smiling, I think, at the prospect of the fact he's just gained a little bit of time over Andres Mace, and he's closing up to Tan ahead, and right now could look to get ahead of the Ferrari driver. He's able to continue to close this gap up, but we'll have to wait and see as they make their way down through the right-hander of 18 onto another lap here. And you can see once again, and I think Mooney's running a lot of downforce on that Porsche, because it's really struggling to pick up speed on the straight here down to 1, and you can see Tan's close, but he's not close enough. What Tan needs to do, he needs to be on the exit of Casio. He needs to be within 3 tenths of a second, and then he can make the move or look for the move under braking into 1 and 2, and that's the deficit here. Mooney running a lot of downforce on that Porsche because he's just not going anywhere on the straights by comparison with his opponent as they make their way on through. But looking from our top 10 and just outside of the top 10 right now, I can tell you that it's the case that Marcus Fox into the pit, but Vesfield, meanwhile, the Swiss here chasing after Soldatov as they come through the left into right of 5 into 6 right now, and the Etrudian Racing Team driver has got quite a difficult driver to get past Soldatov there. Will make that Aston Martin quite wide if he decides to do so. Quite a good defensive driver from what we're hearing, and as he makes his way through 7 and up into 8 right now, you can see a little flash of lights there from Field trying to distract the driver ahead of him, trying to get him to look in his rearview mirror and ask, well, why is he flashing me, rather than thinking, oh yeah, there's the braking zone for Degner 1. And as they make their way out of Degner 2 and charge up towards the hairpin once again here, you can see it's a situation where Field getting closer and closer. But I think at this point, now that he's got this close, he's got to try and find a way to add the compound onto what is the potential for that overtake and force the overtake, but now as they accelerate out of turn 11, this is where the pain is felt, because that Aston Martin just simply opens the gap up there, and you can see, whilst it's not a huge gap, it's enough to keep him safe, and that's the deficit that the Porsche will have versus the Aston Martin here, is the fact that when the car's got the better straight line acceleration, you really do need to be incredibly close and practically get the move done through the opening 2 sectors. But then looking outside our top 20 right now, we're hearing that Chris Zoiger is into the pits. I think he's had more technical issues, and as a result he's not racing with us in this race, which is very unfortunate for the Swiss. But meanwhile, just outside that top 20, we have got here Mikel Rattel here for the Cosmos Racing team, chasing down Lucas Seedorf right now. He's 1.3 seconds ahead, and he's got a 2.3 second gap to Felipe behind. So as a result, feeling pretty safe right now is Rattel, albeit he wants to get inside that top 20 as soon as possible. And speaking of someone who will look to be making moves, we've got Cormac Ryan Meenan here in the FFS Racing Ferrari here, as he makes his way down into a Casio Triangle here. The pink Ferrari really standing out there along with the FFS logo as he makes his way down through 18, and he chases after Gellin here. Gellin has made a lot of ground, it should be pointed out, on the opening laps here. We're not even 1/3 of the way into the race, and Gellin has come up to P17 already, but Meenan, with that incident earlier on, is now gaining us behind. You can see it's the case that Lux having to go to degree defensive versus Seedor here, but I think the Porsche driver just not able to get the overspeed versus the Austrian as they make the way into turn 2. In fact, Seedor going a little bit too high on the curb there, on the entry curve into 2, and as a result riding along it and losing the time, and Rattel is going to close up because of this as they make their way on through the sequence of corners here. And as they come on through, we look a bit further down the order, and I can tell you that after all the pit stops and whatnot, Emil Blaine in P35 right now has got Marcus Fox who's come out behind him 7.5 seconds, but Blaine not having a good day at the office is the Dane as he makes his way across that timing line once again to go on to another lap. For him it is 11th lap of the circuit, as right now our leaders are effectively what's the 12th lap. And speaking of our leaders, here they are as they make their way through Spurn Curve once again, and we can see George Bivy right now leading ahead of Spears still, the gap half a second and closing under acceleration here out towards 130R, but no real change between the two of them. As we can see, their Spears just pulling out of the slipstream, I think trying to get a little bit of vision of what's ahead of him, but also trying to cool the tyres down a tiny bit through 130R, and also trying to say to Booby, look, I'm still here, don't forget about me. I haven't tried to go for a move recently, but I am still here, as we are starting to get our first pit stops, and we're hearing that DeMarco's into the pits from what was at the time in the top 30, in the outside the top 30s, and he's dropping that down the order as more pit stops are on their way, and plenty more action ahead, as meanwhile we look a little bit further down the order. But before we do, we continue looking at our leaders right now as they do get a little bit closer. But we've seen this time and time again where it's the case the Mercedes driver of Spears is able to close up considerably, and then the gap opens up through the handling sector, and we're going to see that again here. Meanwhile, what I can tell you has started to space out is the battle for P3, and we can see here Boulay, the Frenchman, just starting to break away. A gap of 1 second, just over a second now versus Whitehead. To be fair, Whitehead will be working hard behind in the Porsche, but it's a situation where the Intruder Racing Team driver of Boulay just gradually inching his way away right now, and I think the strategy is where the big contention point will come. As meanwhile, one driver who has yet to break away, but he's still holding on to P6, that's Raymond Mooney, as he makes his way through turn number 6 and into 7 very shortly. And Ufriev and Mesa have fallen backwards, but Tan is still with Mooney and still relentlessly on the offensive as the Ferrari driver versus the Porsche as they make their way through the left-hander here of 7 up into Degner 1 at 8. And as they come on through there, you can see Mooney missing the apex a little bit, having to take a bit of a conservative approach to the corners as a result, and Tan will try to close up and use that to his advantage as they make their way up into turn 11 once again and coming into that heavy braking zone, of course. And you can see there just the difference again, that angle you can see on Tan's car in terms of attacking into the apex versus Mooney with a much more gentle approach. And I think it is one of those situations right now where Tan will need to really overdrive and wrangle the neck of that Ferrari in order to be able to get past Mooney, because Mooney's doing everything right so far as we continue to look a bit further down the order. And we see Izzo, after a reasonable start, the Italian from Cortec Racing 0-3, making his way down towards turn number 13, heading down towards Spoon right now. The next target for him is Shashinov in P15 right now, and he does have an advantage of 8 seconds over Gellin down in P17. As we see Izzo making his way all the way through the Cortec Racing machine here, going through the left-hander with aplomb. And Shashinov right now, in terms of lap times, it's the case that Shashinov at that last lap, in terms of the delta between the two of them, it was the case that the P15 driver was 4 tenths of a second faster. So I think it's more the case that right now Izzo may be trying to recover and get closer to the Ferrari ahead of him after what was a campaign faltered by perhaps a mistake, alternatively trying to get past the back marker. We won't be able to tell you exactly what happened, but we do know that Izzo lost on that previous lap, and he's now trying trying to gain once again. But speaking of drivers who are gaining, meanwhile, it is the case that after what has been a bit of a tricky start, we can see Walter Lux here still holding on to P19 right now and keeping Lucas Seedorf at bay for the time being, and Seedorf still in pursuit. But the Porsche versus Ferrari situation, much like we're seeing between Mooney and Tan, ahead all the way up in P6. Of course, it's the reverse here. It's the Ferrari that's leading, the Porsche that's behind. But as they make the way out of 17-18 and onto another lap here, we'll once again see that situation where Lux will gradually be reeled in here by his opponent, but his opponent's not going to be close enough in order to close up despite the speed he's going to have. And actually, in fact, Seedorf a bit further back this time, perhaps starting to back off and think about the long game. As we see there, Lux gets it very wrong through turn 1 and into 2. He's gone very deep as a result, just carrying too much speed into the braking zone for 2. And as he now rejoins racing line, it is the case that Lux is starting to feel that pressure once again, as Seedorf's going to be all over the back of him here. But it's the case, the Porsche driver is just not able to get his nose alongside here, and that of course is because we're going through the S's, and as a result, as we ride on board here with the Polishman, the VRS Satellite Racing driver, once he's able to get close, as soon as he gets within this 2 to 3 tenths of a second zone, he just feels that dirty air, that heat coming off the back of the Ferrari in front of him, and then that's the challenge, because he can get close, but can he force the move? Well, he's going to have to really find a way to send it. He could try and of course the hairpin here, but you see how the Ferrari getting the acceleration out of Degner 2, much like the Porsche, and they're practically even as they come into that braking zone, and you can see there Seedorf looking at that inside line, looking as the door was open, but a Lux I think just teasing him there, like a lift of the skirt effectively to say to him, well, the door's there, but it's not really an overtaking opportunity for you. And as a result, Lux holds the position right now, and Seedorf will be wary to that. He'll know that Lux is teasing him, making him look at a potential move, but it's trying to off-put him or make him hesitate in terms of taking his natural racing line here as they make their way through 13 and into 14. And as they come through Spoon, it is the situation that right now both drivers inseparable, as we see Seedorf there a bit too high on the apex of 14. That's cost him 2 tenths as he's had to lift off the power briefly before getting back on it in the run down towards 130R. But right now both drivers push into their utmost, as meanwhile I can tell you that further up the road, in terms of still the situation of the Porsche leading, Mooney is now starting to make a brief bit of a break ahead of Tan, and it's Tan now who has the pressure, and Onufriev behind him here as the Russian in the M2 competition machine. When the camera pans round, it's one of those situations right now where I think Tan has gone from the hunter to being the hunted, and he's going to be feeling that pressure on the back of his neck very shortly, as we can see that Onufriev here trying to find a way up on through, but it looks as though Tan right now just simply starting to compose the car once again and go hunting after Mooney. So I think it might be the case there was a mistake, but that mistake has now been rectified, and Onufriev will now have to keep his eyes on as Andres Mesa behind is 1.5 seconds back and goes a little bit high on the apex there of what was turn 8 or Degner 1 as we also know it. And you see Andres Mesa falling backwards a little bit and just having a bit of difficulty now as we're heading towards the end of the first half an hour of the race. And I think it's the case that Andrew's backing off the car to a degree and just trying to find a way to get into this race via some other form. As meanwhile we see Soldatov here, who is under pressure from Vesfield, and Vesfield behind him as they make their way through the hairpin here. You can see the Porsche driver still stuck there behind the Aston Martin. He just does not have enough acceleration out of the corners to match the Aston Martin, but Vez all over the back of him here, and I do wonder whether we're going to see some undercuts come up soon, for the simple reason we would, based on the fact it's a 90-minute race, we would expect if drivers were going to come in and split this race evenly, they would come in at the 30-minute and the 60-minute mark. So will we see some undercuts get deployed here, or will we be waiting until, say, the halfway point of the race? All questions to be answered. Of course, so the big question will be who's running heavy fuel and who's running low fuel, or light fuel as we should say, in order to give themselves a little bit of a pace boost early on in the race. But of course then they've got to put the fuel in later on, as we can see Soldatov here just holding firm for the time being and holding on to that P12 position. We're going from those guys to the guy behind right now who really needs no introduction in terms of the team. Racing for SPQR, of course, Mattia Civoloni, the Italian driver making his way through turn 17 and 18. And it's a situation right now where his teammates up in P10 and meanwhile Chevrolet down in P14. And just keeping his eyes, I think, on what is Field and Soldatov ahead. He's not close enough to attack them. He is the best part of what is 3 seconds behind them. But meanwhile, it is the case that he does have a nice advantage over the guys behind him. And that is, of course, Shashinov and Izo, who are the best part of 4 seconds back. So in a bit of a no man's land right now, and I think he'll be thinking about his strategy more as he makes his way through the S's once again on lap number 16, and now how can he use that to jump the battles ahead. But speaking of battles that are growing, I can tell you that Shashinov right now, as the camera pans around here, Shashinov holding firm versus Izo as they make their way through the S's and feeling that pressure building up as they come on through, and as they make their way through turn 6 and up into 7 at this point, it's a situation where Shashinov holding on for the time being, and as as he continues to make his way through the corners. He's got it a little bit wrong. In fact, he's not got the nose stabilised. That's the back of the throttle, and he's up into a position of P15 as it's one small mistake that cost the Armamentario red machine as he makes his way around through turn number 9 right now. And can he come back? That will be the big question very shortly as he comes through the right-hander here as he makes his way up into the hairpin. I think now he's going to have to try and go on the offensive to come on through, but as they come through the hairpin here, we can see it's the case that Shashinov is really starting to feel the crunch of that Ferrari not having the same straight line acceleration as the Aston Martin ahead as they come down. As they make their way through the corner of 12 and up into 13, we are just going to try and bring you an update of the overall standings to give you an idea of where everybody is, as we've just been asked in the Twitch chat here. And here are some of the overall standings right now. And whilst these timing screens will not be completely up to date in terms of those times are not going to be updating on a regular basis, this just gives you an idea of the relative gaps between drivers as things currently stand. And we will switch back to the other data format a little bit later on in approximately 5 minutes time. That's just to give you a feel of where everybody is out on circuit at this current point in time. But meanwhile, looking back towards our leaders right now, Boothby has started to make the break from Spears. It should be pointed out that gap between the two of them has actually opened up to the best part of what is in the region of about 1.6 seconds. As you can see, they make their way through the corners here, and as they come around through turn at number 7 and up into 8 at this point, I think the situation is Boothby just trying to give it all he's got in order to try and break away, and as they make their way on through. And as they come through the corners, here's a situation where I can just see in the YouTube chat there, Chris Zuga saying that they're really looking forward to this race and really sad can't race today, but it looks like it's going to be a very close and interesting race. Indeed it is, Zuga, and I'm very sorry to hear that you weren't able to make it back in, as we hear Danila Cherepin here has received a 5-second penalty. Now, what has happened here? That's the big question. Well, I'm just checking in with the stewards whilst this is all going on, ladies and gentlemen. You'll have to give me a brief moment, but in terms of what's going on elsewhere out on circuit right now, Cherepin really has had a moment and it has not worked out to his advantage. In fact, he's going to be feeling the pinch, as we hear from Igor Palmik there in the YouTube chat, who was cheering on Chris Oyga, and will also be cheering on Vesfield by the sounds of things. And we've got an interesting strategy for our P13 man of Vesfield as he makes his way through turn number 12. We'll have to wait and find out what's going to happen there, but I'm just trying to get you the update on why Cherepin has been given that penalty, and as soon as I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I will, as we're just getting that information coming through right now. And give us a brief moment. But whilst that information is on the way, it is the case that right now everybody's starting to end up in their little battles effectively now after we've cleared the first third of this race. We've still got 56 minutes to go of the 90 minutes, and we've still got, for the majority of our drivers, as you can see there in the orange-white numbering system beside their driver number, we've still got most of our drivers waiting to take their first stop, let alone their second stop. Although I say that, one driver has already taken a pit stop and is actually quite a way down the order. But then again, this could actually work to his advantage, is Oleg Zalobov, who right now down in P23 is running in a nice amount of clear air, the SMP Racing Esports driver. Could this work to his advantage? Because he's already made one pit stop. We know, whilst it's not the longest pit lane here at Suzuka, it will cost some time. Could he find himself jumping back up through the order by simply running this clear air and having a good amount of pace to his advantage? Well, to give you an idea, his last lap was a 2:02. And the drivers ahead of him, the majority of the drivers ahead of him, all the way up to P15, are lapping in the 2:01. So right now, you can imagine if Oleg continues this pace, he could jump his way well up into the top 20, if not have an outside chance of getting towards the top 10 come the end of his second stint, whereas everyone else is still finishing their first stints, as we will wait to see. And I am hearing that right now in terms of the stewarding, so we are just going to give you that update on what happened to Cherepin as we just get that data on our laptop, which is off the screen effectively, as we continue to see Zalobov making his way on through. But we now look to Danila Cherepin, who has that 10-second penalty, which he will have to serve in the pits. It is a 10-second penalty where he will be parked in the pit lane. He's not allowed to have any work done on the car for the opening 10 seconds. The Russian driver here, the McLaren driver, has picked up that penalty for what was, as we just double check here, the 10-second time penalty for car number 177. Is pushed to pass on car number 11. So that was on Mooney, pushed to pass earlier on in the race. We have also had some other penalties be applied to drivers, it should be pointed out, including what was a 15-second time penalty for car number Apologies, car number 24 for avoidable contact. And who is car number 24, you ask? Well, that is a driver who's quite a way down the order from what I recall in terms of the door numbers. Well, I say that actually, that driver, I'm just trying to find them on my data screen, but it looks as though at the moment I have not got their number. We will get you that as soon as I possibly can, but unfortunately car number 24 does not be appearing in our data screen at this point in time. But Champion has got the penalty at the moment, and he will have to serve that in the pits, and that was for a push to pass versus Mooney earlier on in the race. But as we look all the way down towards the bottom of ranks order right now, we can see down in P33 we've got Sorensen here as he makes his way through what is turn number 10 and into 11. He's got his, well, I thought he was going to say he's got his teammate ahead of him. Well, it's Emil Blaine ahead, but Emil Blaine, I believe, well, in fact, that's Blaine behind him there as we get the two Nordic Racing Team drives, the NRT cars, making their way on through. Will we see them swap here? And well, they're chasing after Fox, but remember, Fox has already made his first pit stop, and we did see Marcus Fox make a very early stop compared to the majority of the field as they make their way around. So could it be the case that Fox is up to something here and trying to find a way to jump past most of the field? That will be the big question as the drawing goes on. And in terms of that penalty, it was for Killian Ryan Meenan, and unfortunately I believe Meenan has retired from the race due to technical issues with the car. So as a result, we will not be seeing Meenan any further in this race as plenty more stewarding is ongoing at this point in time. But whilst it is all going on, of course, we continue to look around right now, and having had the data screen up there to give you an idea of where everybody is out on circuit in terms of places, we're now going to change those timings back to effectively what is the timings here, as we can see, and the more live timings, but of course less cars displayed, as we see a drive-through penalty for Andre Jacqueline once again. And what's happened to the number? Well, it's the case, I think for Jacqueline it has just been a bad day at the office. In fact, the car's already retired from the race, so Jacqueline has parked up in the pit and retired the car. So that is going to be a drive-through that I think is going to linger with him for a bit longer beyond today. He may have to serve some sort of penalty going into round number 2, but that is for the stewards to decide. As we now look up towards our leader here, and we can see it's the case where it looks like Booby here has made a breakaway. Hold up a second, we seem to be missing a driver who was pursuing, and that is Harry Spears. Now, where is Spears in all this? As we see Raymond Mooney into the pits, and what was at the time P5 here. So Mooney held on versus Tan, so all the pit stops are now starting to occur, and this is where the big challenge now becomes. Where are all our drivers going to come out when all is said and done? Well, if you're wondering where Harry Spears is in all of this, we're just trying to find him out on the circuit for you. Having made, I believe, as a pit stop, Harry Spears has come out in P22, but he does have clear air here, and this could work to the Mercedes driver's advantage. As behind him, that's Pushkarev down in P22, and he's got a 4.4 second gap to close down to Walter Lux ahead as the Good Smile driver here makes his way up into Casio Triangle. But Spears was the first person out of our top two to pull the trigger on terms of the pit stops there as he makes his way through the right-hander at turn 18. Meanwhile, looking further back up the field as more and more pit stops are coming in, including Raymond Mooney and Cormac Ryan Mean. I can tell you that it's the case that Leo Boulay, with the drivers pitting ahead of him, we've got Boulay staying out on circuit right now and making his way around in P2. But he has got that pressure building once again from Whitehead, as we can see Whitehead tucked in behind him right now, and we just take a brief sip of water. Now, the McLaren driver at this point has got to think about, okay, I've got Whitehead on the offensive once again. Whitehead did back it off to a degree. About 20 minutes in, he backed it off. But now, as we're moving into this second phase of the race, effectively, it's one of those situations where Whitehead will try to close things down and put some pressure on. Now, can he trigger Boulay to make a pit stop, or will Whitehead be the first to make the pit stop out of these two and go for the undercut? Of course, being the lead driver, you do have the ability to dictate when the pit stop occurs, but we'll wait to see how that plays out as they make their way through the corners here, and as they come up towards Casio Triangle once again into that braking zone. You can see it's the case that Whitehead really closing up as they make the way out and onto another lap, and it is the case that Boulay comes into the pits as he makes his way in, so he releases Whitehead here, and of course this will mean now for the Porsche driver that the next couple of laps are going to be critical, and the same for Boulay. He will want to Whitehead right now most likely react to this unless he's got something very different up his sleeve. We'll wait and see as he makes his way around. Meanwhile, further down, I can tell you that Vasily Anufriev right now has come into the pits as well. So we are seeing drivers coming in clusters here, and I think this is to try and keep them in the fight with the driver that they were behind before the pit stops, but we will wait and see how this occurs. As meanwhile, Vesfield into the pits here. Now, we were told to keep an eye on him. He may have an interesting strategy up his sleeve. We'll wait to see what the Swiss is going to do here, but he's coming from what was at the time P12, running a good race so far, and we'll wait to see how this plays out for him. As I can tell you further down the order right now, one of our drivers who is really trying to make a recovery out of this race, Tinko van der Velde, as he makes his way around here. And we can see the McLaren driver here for Team Tonki coming up towards what is 130R. The Dutchman charging all the way up towards 130R. And ahead of him is Shimatensky. And as he's a 2.1 second gap, we can see behind me what I believe that is a battle building between what is Effenstedt and Blekic as they make the way out of 130R and up towards Casio Triangle. But again, the situation now for Effenstedt, much like with other cars he's had around him earlier on, he's got the big bulky Bentley ahead of him, and he's got to find a way to get past the Bentley as they make their way through turn 18 and on to another lap here. Now, how can he do it? Well, the McLaren is a bit faster on the straights by comparison to the Bentley when it's running a certain downforce configuration, but we'll have to wait and see as it looks though. In fact, the Bentley just a little bit faster in the run down towards turn 1 as we see Vesfield coming out behind all of this, and this may not have worked out for Vez as he's now going to have to essentially find his way past the pack of drivers who are battling left, right and centre. The good news for him, of course, is the fact that a number of them have not pitted once yet and should be expected to pit. But one driver who has already pitted, and he's at the back of this trio as we ride on board with him, is Vaca as he makes his way on through here. And the Team Ballers Esport driver making his way through 5 and 6 up into 7, trying to get on the offensive as he gets it a little bit wrong there on the exit of 7, just carrying a bit too much momentum and the car not wanting to settle. But as he tries to chase after the McLaren ahead of him right now, tries to get the move on one of the two guys, you can imagine at this point he'll probably be thinking to himself, why won't they just pit, as they make their way out of Degna 2 and up towards the hairpin. Well, I think unfortunately for Vaca at this point, he's just got to simply time his opportunity and wait for the two guys in front of him to potentially make a mistake. As meanwhile, we look back to the exterior camera here, and as they make their way on through, you can see the traffic building behind them right now as they come around. And that behind them is Krivek, and then you've got Field down in P27, who's going to be closing up on these guys very rapidly as they make their way on through. And Vez Field coming all the way down in P27. I think it might be the case he may have taken a set of tyres and now be going to the end on that set of tyres. Oh, goodness me, it looks like Effenstedt's made a mistake there at what is Spoon Curve, and as they exit the corner, I think Vaca at this point is going to get them moved on. Or Willie, it's going to be a drag race up towards 130 on Vaca on the inside as they make the way out towards the corner. But you can see Effenstedt backing off and switching to the inside here, but he has not got the overspeed. I think he needs to give this one up as they make their way through the left-hander and up towards Casio Triangle chicane as they come into that heavy braking zone. No change between these guys this time around as they make their way through the right into left combination. Now as they come on through 18 and go on to what is their 22nd lap of the circuit right now, more pit stops coming in, and I believe it's the case our race leader still staying out, Andres Mesa still staying out as well, and Matteo Morano as well, and Ivan Fornes. But it's the case the majority of our leaders have now pitted to some extent, as we can see here Vaca just trying to chase after Blekic at this point, and behind them you can see now we've got Krivek here who's closing up as well, the Aston Martin driver in this hunt, and Vesfield has closed up onto this pack right now, and this is not what he would have wanted to see, because these guys battling like this and in this formation will torpedo his potential race pace. I think he needs to think about getting past them very quickly, and in the Porsche it may be difficult given the fact he's up against a load of fast chargers in terms of cars that accelerate out of corners very well. But it looks as though Vaca's looking for the move here versus Blekic as they come out of 7 up towards 8 into Degna 1. But Vaca's going to be on the outside. There's a bit of door-to-door contact, and as they make their way through the corner, Vaca goes wide, and as a result he's onto the gravel and rejoins. And I think he rejoins there on the outside of Field, who has to take a little bit of evasive action as the rejoining Bentley now battles with him in the run up towards the hairpin. And as they come in, Vaca's going to hold the inside line versus Field, and Field's going to be made to go all the way around the outside in order to try and get this done. He's going to stay there with him, Field using the grip and the Porsche's handling, and he gets the move done there, and Field now up into P24 with a brave move there. And I think it's the case that for Vesfield, he's not going to give in. He really is going to hunt this one. He's got one of the 4 out of the way. Now he's got another 3 cars to try and get past as he goes deeper and deeper into this second stint as they make their way through Spoon. Now can he hunt down Krivek next? Well, it's going to be the case. I think all of the advantages he has will be neutralised in the straight line here, as they'll all be using the toe of the drivers ahead of them. But as they make their way in the roaring charge down towards 130R here, I think it's one of those situations as we hit the halfway point of the race, still 45 minutes to go, that Field will now look for a potential move into turn 1. Or Willie, as Krivek there just does not have the momentum, and Field's looking to the outside inside here into Casio. He goes all the way around the outside, another place gained as he makes his way through, and I think it might be the case he's on much fresher rubber compared to the guys around him right now as he's made that compound work. As we hear that Krivek is in, oh goodness me, I think Krivek is into the pit. I would presume he's in. Yes, he is into the pits. That's just been confirmed as Vesfield continues on the charge. And as they make their way down towards turns 1 and 2 here, it's the situation as they come up towards the corner. It's Effenstedt who goes deep there. And as a result, whilst we could look away, it's one of those situations where Effenstedt making that mistake and fills up another place right now. And he's on a mission to come through as Effenstedt continues to run that old compound. And ahead of him now, you can see Servalone here, who's trying to find his way through as well. He's only recently pitted. And then you've got Field trying to come from the inside to outside here through turn 5 and up into through 6 and up into 7, I should say. And Field goes all the way around the outside. And the Italian here has just been simply caught up too closely behind Blecich. And as a result now, as you can see behind, it's the case that we have got there Vesfield making his way on through, and also behind them you've got Effenstedt who's just been overtaken by Soldatov as they all make their way through. And now Field is going to try and go around the outside once again at the hairpin, but surely not from this far back is he going to try. As you can see, Soldatov trying to get into the action here as well, as they're all kicking off, as they're all trying to navigate past one another's strategies. And you can see it's the situation as they make their way on through that Blecich at this point leading this pack of drivers as they make their way on through. Will Field is flashing his lights furiously to say, I'm coming through whether you're ready or not, but he's going to have to work a bit more than this to get past the yellow Bentley, which has proven to be a thorn in everyone's race so far as they make their way through Spoon Curve. But Blecich goes deep there and Field's very close, but he's a bit too close too soon. And now it's the long run down towards 130R, but you can see the snake trainer cars as Blecich has yet to take a pit stop. That's Matteo in the rear. Meanwhile, Servalone, who's trying to go defensive versus Soldatov, and as they all come on through here, they all settle back down into a line. But it's an angry queue of cars all looking to try and make the overtake here, but Blecich just holds on by the skin of his teeth for the time being as they make their way on through Casio Triangle. And surely he's got to come into the pits at this point. No, he stays out again. I think at this point now he's got himself too close to the guys behind. They're all looking for movements. It's 4 wide down the straight, and it's contact between the drivers as they make their way down, and now it's 3 wide as we can see Vesfield in the middle, and as he looks to go for this contact all between the 3 of them as the 3 trying to go into 1, and it looks as though Field being bounced around like a ping pong ball. Soldatov on the inside there, and it's Servalone who's lost out massively for all this, turning in and seeing there were 2 cars on his inside, and that's a disaster for the Italian. But this goes to show how close they're racing and how the overlap in strategies has cost those guys massively, particularly Servalone now, who's dropped down to the back of this pack and has to go racing once again. And hopefully that's not major suspension damage, because if so, that is going to cripple his race entirely. As meanwhile Blecich right now goes defensive. He actually goes onto the racing line versus Vaca, who's going to try and come through again here. But the Bentley driver behind will know only too well how strong Blechic's defence is as he makes his way up towards the hairpin at this point. And Vesfield has lost out to Soldatov, who came from the inside. Of course, the Vez has got to now find his way past the driver in the Aston Martin on fresh tyres as well. And this has not worked out for the drivers who come out of the pits. The driver it's worked out most for is Konstantin Soldatov here, who now in P15 is at the head of this pack and is in the one car that is very difficult to overtake due to its straight line speed. My goodness, but as these guys are battling for position right now, we have to look a bit further up the field, and it's Dylan Tan who's at the head of a pack in battling for P9 as the Ferrari driver here. Has Andres Mesa behind him. 41 minutes to go in this race, and it's really come alive now with the strategy kicking off. It was already much alive, I should assure you, ladies and gentlemen, but now it has gone up a notch as they all make their way around here. And it's the case 4 o'clock in the afternoon in Japan, and it's not getting any lighter in terms of the battling as we see Andres Mesa here looking for the potential move on Tan as they make their way down towards turn 1, and Mesa's going to be made to go all the way to the inside, but Tan squeezes him and forces him to have to back off there. Mesa flashing his lights there, and I think he feels as though he's been inconvenienced a bit too much, but that's the one for the stewards we take a look at. I'm sure the team principals will be on the radio right now as they make their way through 3 and 4 and head up towards 5 once again. Through the S's they go. Meanwhile, in terms of your race leader, I can tell you that George Boothby has taken his first pit stop and has an advantage over Spears of 5 seconds as it currently stands. So both of our leaders have pitted, and as a result now they are proceeding on their way in terms of their second stints. And Leo Boulay has taken his first stop, and he is ahead of Walter Lux right now, who is yet to pit. It should be pointed out, the Ferrari driver. That's Kopsov in the rear of the picture from Boulay, and then you have got Walter Lux in P4. Now we can tell that Kopsov has got a 10-second penalty and Felipe has got a drive-through penalty. We'll give you an update on that very shortly with regards to what's happened on the on the penalties being applied, as right now we can see that Lux, who is yet to pit, I mean, if he's going to go this long, Walter Lux in the TUG Racing Esport machine, as he goes a bit deep there to 14, I think he might have decided just to let the steering lock off there and let Whitehead through, knowing he doesn't need to battle, as we've got a drive-through for Emil Blaine as well at this point coming in. We've got a lot of penalties coming in. Something has happened further down the order outside our top 30 and we haven't seen it. But I think what Lux is trying to do here, he's trying to go so long on this opening stint to avoid all the battling. What he will want to do, he'll want to pit with about 30 minutes remaining, or a little bit earlier than that, but he'll want to pit to take his first stop in order to put the fuel in the car and put on a new set of tyres and essentially turn it into a qualifying race. And in his second stop, he will literally come in, put a tiny dab of fuel in that 1 litre and then come back out. And I think that is what he's targeting right now, because for Lux to run this long, and it's working out to be fair, in the fact that he stayed out of the battling, this could really be a major comeuppance for a lot of drivers, as they're just going to see this Austrian appear out of nowhere miles ahead. But we will wait and see how it all plays out, as meanwhile the one driver who was ahead in a lot of the battling earlier on was Mooney, and now he's behind Anufriev, and just ahead of them they've got Uvlin there in the Mercedes, who is a lap down, and he's in P36. Uvlin at the head of his pack, and we'll be soon seeing the blue flags wave. But meanwhile, as we look to our stewarding report right now, I can definitely tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that our stewarding has been very intense so far, and as a result I will try to decipher all the penalties that have been applied, but apologies if I miss any of them. You have to understand there's been a lot to analyse for our stewards right now, and I think they're frantically working in their office as we're frantically working in the commentary box here to keep our eyes on everything that's happening. But you can see that Tan, meanwhile, a little bit further back from this fight, but if they continue to fight like this, he will close up Tan most likely within the next 4 laps. So you see him in the rear of the picture of Andres Mesa over the back of him, but Mooney right now closing up to Anufriev. Now, the reason we have got a drive-through penalty for what is Luca Filippi, who's ahead of these guys, he's the next driver to be overtaken in terms of a lap driver, and that is the Avalo Racing machine from Germany, and it's great to have Filippi on board, of course. The reason he has got the penalty, the drive-through penalty on car number 9, as we just tried to get that confirmed for you. And I don't have anything at the moment to confirm why it's car number 9 with the penalty, so my apologies folks, but he does have a drive-through. That may be for track limits. I suspect that could be a track limits penalty actually, as the reason he's got that drive-through. We do, however, have a drive-through penalty for what is car 664, and car 664, for those wondering who is number 664, that's Emil Blaine, and that is for avoidable contact for when battling car number 27, and car 27 is Mike Crute, and Mike Crute, where is Crute, of course, is the big question. Well, he's just made his way out of the pits, and he is the best part of a good amount of the race down. I think he's the best part of 2 laps down on our leaders. He is indeed, and at this point, the AM driver from SAS Racing is right in the thick of probably one of the most intense battles you could be in right now, as all our drivers make their way through and have to navigate what is essentially 2 packs of drivers being lapped over the top of one another, because ahead of him he's got Lucas Sedor, who is a lap down on the leaders, and then you've got Brulé behind Mike catching up, and also Pantera, and those drivers also trying to get through. In fact, Pantera's a further lap down, so as a result, everybody trying to navigate around one another, as we can see Crute here having to go onto the wide line here versus what is Pantera, and Pantera coming through. I think Crute just backing out. They're trying to understand who's he meant to give the way to and the blue flags, as they're all trying to come rip-roared on through, but they're all navigating it safely right now, and it's great to see, of course, the rookie staying out of trouble here and just trying to keep his head down in P41 as Boulay there flashing his lights, and I think Crute just staying nicely over to the side as we see Boulay continuing to build up that momentum. And of course, for Boulay right now, he will want to clear this traffic jam of cars as quickly as possible, because he will not want Whitehead getting any closer, and Whitehead is at the back of this pack right now in P4, so you can imagine Boulay will want to clear these guys in the most advantageous positions, and meanwhile see Whitehead lose out massive time by comparison. But whether that works out or not, of course, that is a different question entirely as they make their way on through at Spoon Curve once again. But you can see our trackside marshals waving the blue flags madly right now, as it's the case that Walter Lux will be closing up to the back of this gradually, and he will then have to navigate through the panels. I think that is Crute who's been into the wall. Now, I'm not sure whether that was his own doing or whether it was another driver. Crute, I think, has had a bit of a moment with the wall and the exit of 14 and the exit of Spoon, but Whitehead, who's in the midst of this pack right now, well, he's navigated past Kopsov, who's picked up a 10-second penalty, and now he's got to find his way through the next drivers ahead. As meanwhile, whilst they're making their way on through, I can tell you it's the case that further up the road, after taking his first pit stop, that is Belic, who's further up the road And Sanjin Belic right now, the Croatian, in what is a battle with Lucas Sidor here into turn 1. This is the battle for P31, but do remember as he goes a bit deep there and Sidor gets the move on the inside, remember that Belic ran incredibly long on his opening stint. He's only just pitted and taken his first pit stop, so he's still got plenty more pit stops to take as Marcus Fox ahead of these guys has already made both stops. As they make their way on through, I'm hearing that Vacca's got a stop and go at 30-second penalty, and we will continue to identify what those penalties are for, and I think that is for speeding in the pit lane, that penalty. So as a result, it is a bit of a difficult situation for plenty of drivers here, as meanwhile, as they all make their way on through, we continue to look around and we look back up towards the head of our pack right now, and George Booby holding on to that lead, and he is clear of the traffic for the time being as he's trying to navigate his way on through, and indeed a very tricky situation for our leaders as they try to find their way around the circuit. And as they come all on around, we can see Digital Car Culture there in the YouTube chat enjoying himself. Great to hear from you. And Sweet Lurb as well enjoying the racing, and Jerry Race Car Driver enjoying things as well. And Dr. Glock saying Boothby's strategy worked like a dream. Well, indeed it has, and in fact it's brought him out very nicely ahead of Spears. He's got an advantage of almost 8 seconds over his main rival in this race right now. I think Spears at this point will be thinking, how do I get back into this one? Well, that is going to be a challenge that only he can answer, as we said, Boothby making his way down into Casio. And where is our P2 man in all of this? Well, Harry Spears is just making his way up towards 130R, and you can see the Mercedes driver here under braking, coming on into the corners here as he makes his way on through, and as he comes through Casio Triangle with 33 minutes remaining at this point. I think he'll be thinking to himself right now, you know what, second place isn't bad, we'd love to get the win, but given how this race has played out and how close it's been between him and Boothby at the start of the race at least, that a P2 would suffice very nicely, and there's still plenty to go. It's not over yet, we've still got 33 minutes of racing. Anything can happen until that checkered flag is waved and taken, and that is what Spears will be counting as he makes his way through turn 2 once again. But as he makes his way around right now, we can see the Histrali saying that Boulay Whitehead battle. Indeed, we can take a look at that, and indeed it looks though here, in fact, that there's been a change of position. Now, where on earth has that happened? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think there may have been a mistake from Boulay on circuit, because looking at his lap time delta, his last lap was a 2:02.0 to Whitehead's 2:05. So I think it's the case that Boulay has had a moment where he's gone off circuit. Whitehead has been able to get past as a result. So that is why now Boulay is down in P4. Whitehead is in P3. So sorry we didn't quite see that on camera, but Whitehead is in control of that P3 position for the time being, and we'll wait to see whether these two come back together, because Boulay was running with good pace until something seems to have gone wrong for him, and we'll see what exactly that was when we can hear about it more likely as they make their way down towards the hairpin once again here. And now Whitehead making it a mission to break away as they head up towards the next pack of traffic. And Lucas Sidor, the next car on their way, and Sidor immediately lifting off there on the exit of 11 and letting the battle for P3 come on through. And behind them, well, in terms of battles that are building up once again, it's a situation that I think that Belic is trying to get past Pantera, who is a lap down on Belic effectively. But further ahead of these guys, the next guys they're going to have to pass who are back markers, but they're battling for position. Here's Marcus Fox in P30. He's cleared both his pit stops, and ahead of him is Krivic and also Vacca, but Vacca has got a stop and go 30-second penalty that he must serve at some point for speeding in the pit lane. So as a result, Fox and Krivic will be closing up to one another, and they've got Spears just behind them right now as they make the way on through, and as they come charging through Casio Triangle, we look a little bit further up the road. And speaking of battles that are ongoing, I can tell you that Dylan Tan in P7, he's still got one more stop to go, as is Andres Mesa, and these two have been inseparable since they've come out the pit. And for Mesa, it has not worked out in terms of he's been tucked in behind Tan for so long here, and really for Andres Mesa, he's been tucked in behind every driver who's proven to be a nuisance to get past, and he just cannot seem to unleash the momentum that Aston Martin has. He's very capable of it, there's no doubt about that, and he's very close right now to the back of Tan as they make their way out to Casio Triangle. And I think at this point Andres Mesa will just be looking for an opportunity to try and just get a little bit more of an advantage and find a way on through, but where can he do it? He's getting close here down to turn 1, but I don't think he's got enough of an overspeed to even consider going to the inside, and he has to wait again as they make their way through turn number 2 and head up into the S's. Ahead of them, however, there are some back markers. They've got Crute ahead right now, and this is the worst possible place to catch traffic for the simple reason that to move out the way right now as a member of the traffic jam, you're in a situation where you've got to pull off the racing line and do it very gently, otherwise you end up off on the grass right now. So I think what Crew will do, he will move out the way on the exit of 7 most likely, and this is not ideal for Tam right now. And Mesa, well, it's ideal for Mesa of course because he's going to close that massive. As you can see, Crew they're backing off, and as they make their way on through, both drivers coming through there, and now they've got Bilic up ahead of them, and they'll be looking to get past him as soon as they possibly can. But meanwhile, as they continue to make their way around right now, that's Walter Lux at the head of your camera, who makes his way up into the hairpin, and Lux in P5 just trying to hold on to that position. And I can tell you that, well, hold up a second, ladies and gentlemen, in terms of drivers going fast right now, it's the case that our race leader of Booby is on 59.2s. Meanwhile, Whitehead, I think he may have actually passed Leo Boulay just simply on pace, because Boulay right now is lapping in the 201s. Whitehead, meanwhile, the driver we're looking at now as the camera pans over to him, Whitehead's lapping on the 159.8, so I think Whitehead is on a charge right now, the PPR Esports machine, as he makes his way down towards 130R once again here. And as they come charging on through here, through the left-hander of 130R, it's a situation that Whitehead just doing everything he can to charge after Spears. The gap to Spears, well, at this rate, Spears last lap 159.5 versus Whitehead of 59.8. I do not think he's got the pace right now, Whitehead, to close down Spears, but it will be one of those situations where if Spears does drop the ball at any point here, Whitehead could close up to him, as we see him come across that timeline once again, and Whitehead matching Spears that last time, both of them 59.6s, so this could come together just yet. We still do have that one more pit stop to occur, but meanwhile further back, Dylan Tan still holding off Andres Mesa for the time being, and you can see as they all make their way down, and in the rear of your picture shot there, we've got Matteo Morano from SPQR in P8 right now, just coming up towards the back of the traffic as Andres Mesa has lost out to a degree, and now we've got Morano coming on through here as he makes his way through 1 and into 2, and coming through the right-hander and heading into left-hand of what is turn number 3 at the moment. Crew moves out the way, and Matteo goes on his way once again, and behind them we do have Ivan Fornes right now, and to be fair, the Joker's E-Team driver here, whilst we haven't seen too much of him recently, running a good race in P9 in the Aston Martin, and not really in any difficulty right now. He does have some traffic, which is moving out the way for him, but Fornes turning this race around and really starting to build a position in the top 10 here. As you can see, he makes his way on through, but with Belic moving out the way, you can see behind there in P31, that was Rattel, who just made his way on through, used the cutback through turn 7 with Belic being compromised due to having to let the lead car come on through, and Rattel is now up into P30. The Cosmos Racing Team driver being sneaky and getting the move done there, thanks to the lead car making Bilic's life very difficult indeed as they make their way up into the corner. But meanwhile, further up the road, I can tell you that Walter Lux, when all is said and done, I think Lux has had a very poor run out on circuit right now, because he's the last lap of 202.7, and Lux has yet to pit as he goes wide there at Spoon Curve and lets both drivers on through. But Lux, and we forgot about this before he may have pitted, but he's yet to pit still. He's dropped down to P7 after getting it very wrong under braking into Spoon Curve. But Lux, on what is a very, very long stint now, what is he planning here? Surely he's not planning to go literally until the very end and then make 2 pit stops back to back. If so, this would be incredible. But at this point, he's surely costing himself quite a bit of time. And he's got to be aware of that, because now Morano is coming up behind him in P8, and he'll be trying to take the position very soon. But Lux going very long here, and I suspect a pit stop is coming very soon, as we hear Leo Boulay is into the pit from P4, and here he is just making his way on in right now as Lux goes around once again. But still, he's going to be making his pit stop. In fact, a drive-through penalty for Boulay. Now, what's the penalty for? Well, let's take a look as we just try to find out here. So this is for car number 7, the penalty. And we are still waiting for confirmation as to what that penalty is for, ladies and gentlemen. As soon as I hear anything, unless it's track limits, that's the thing. That means Boulay's not taking his pit stop, but that's an upset in itself, because it means the ITR driver right now, who was running in good pace, has dropped down to P10. And I think it is for track limits, that penalty, because I'm not seeing anything come through on my screen to say otherwise. As they make their way around right now, it is the case that Boulay holding on for the time being, and as they come up towards what is the end of the S's right now, that is going to open up the race. Well, Whitehead now will feel very confident he can take this P3 without too much pressure on him, but of course he will want to make sure that he's secured that as much as possible. But now the hunt is on for P4, and Tan is holding on for the time being. But as the camera pans round into the hairpin here, you have to wonder, when is Andres Mesa going to try and line up that move? As we ride on board here with the Aston Martin Vantage driver once again, and as he makes his way through, the distinct GG man from Spain charges after that Ferrari, but that Ferrari proving very difficult to overtake as he comes up into the braking zone here of Spoon Curve once again, as we see Harry Tojo also in P30 picking up a drive-through penalty, and we'll try to give you the understanding or the breakdown on why he's got that very shortly. But right now, Andres Mason not having the smoothest of runs there out of Spoon. And as a result, as he makes his way up towards 130R at this point, I think it's another case of just observer can't pass as he makes his way into left-hander at turn 15. And they've got a little bit of traffic ahead, and that's Pantera. As we can see there that Tanger's going a little bit wide off the curb, but I think he'll be okay for track limits. But track limits are going to catch some drivers out here, and we can see Andres Mason really strong through Casio Triangle initially, but it's the exit phases of the corners where that Ferrari just seems to have a little bit more punch initially. But as they now start to get into, say, 5th gear and 6th gear, this is where Andres comes back. This is where the Aston Martin really builds that momentum as they come up towards the turn 1-2 sequence, and as they come into that braking zone here, trail braking it in, you can see just how much he starts to close up. He goes a little bit deep there, has to take a very late apex. It will give him launch up through the S's here, but that's not going to gain him much as they make their way through. But they can the traffic of Pantera. Can Mason make this work to his advantage, or will Tan be let through? Tan gets let through very quickly then. You can see Tan just simply able to sail through, as Mason, I think, had to hesitate a little bit and think that Pantera was coming back to him. Pantera stayed well out the way in the end as they both flow through and make their way on towards sector number 2. But Mason now has to try and close up that deficit. It's opened up to 7/10 of a second as they roar on through 7 and up towards 8. Meanwhile, further down, I can tell you, whilst this is all going on, we now have Lux, who's been passed by Morano. Morano has found his way on through, and Lux is continuing to stay out here. Now, whether he's forgotten the manuscript which says that you have to take the 2 pit stops, or whether he has decided to take them all right at the end, I will be very interested to see. But at this point, surely he's got to consider pitting, because he's losing time massively compared to everyone around him. To give you an idea, he's lapping in the mid 202s right now. The top 10 are all lapping in the 159s or the 2-minute flats. They are not lapping in anything of the 201s, let alone the 202s. So Lux right now, by running this long in the number 224 car, is really starting to burn into his own race. But again, it's his strategy and he's the one to run it. We're not going to try and tell him how to run it, as he goes a bit wide there into Spoon, into the second part of Spoon in particular on the apex, or sorry, on the exit curve at turn 13, the entry curve for turn 14. I think if he continues to run wide like that, he may be susceptible to some track limits warnings, or at least, given the fact he's heading out that way, he's going to be wary of the situation with regards to track limits as he makes his way on through turn number 15 right now through 130. The next driver to close up to him, of course, will be Ivan Fornes here, and the Joker's E-Team driver will be seeing Lux close ahead. He'll be seeing that he's yet to pit and be thinking to himself, okay, so Lux is going to just drop away on pace, surely, because if he's yet to pit, I'm going to close up very quickly. Well, we'll have to wait and see, of course, as they make their way around, and as they come down to another lap, still not pitting. Lux still staying out there. with 22.5 minutes to go as they continue to flow on around. Meanwhile, as we look from our top 10 to outside the top 10, I can tell you that our driver, who's right now trying to hold on to the first position outside the top 10, is Shashinov here in P11, as the Armentero driver, the Armentero red driver, has got Izo behind him, and as they make their way down towards turn 1 once again here, it's a tricky situation where Shashinov will need to try and hold on, but Izo, we know, is very fast over the course of a lap in the Aston Martin. But again, the Ferrari's no slouch here at Suzuka. We've seen that in the capable hands of many a driver, and as they make their way through, they're catching up to Boulay. Boulay just ahead of them, in fact, by the best part of what is 2.3 seconds. But I think Shashinov at this point just simply focusing on the situation behind him and hoping he closes up to the McLaren ahead of him over time. But I can tell you that Boulay right now lapping in the high 201s, these guys behind him lapping in the low 2-minute flats. So as a result, at this point, if it continues the way it's going, you can imagine that Shashinov would close up and be in the battle for P10 within the next 2 laps, if not the next lap, and that's something that Boulay will need to be wary of right now, because if he gets dragged into a battle for P10 through to 12, that's only going to do even more damage to what has already been a damage race with that drive-through penalty. As behind them, you can see you've got Ervelin there and Mooney trying to come on through, and Raymond Mooney making the move on the back marker as they come on through. Ervelin obeying the blue flags, I should say, as I mince my words, and as they make their way now through the hairpin, you can see it's the case that Ervelin just staying in P32 and running a good race. He's got Filippi behind him, who's 3.2 seconds back off of Mooney, as they make their way around through turn number 12 once again. And with 21 minutes remaining, we've still got a load of pit stops to take right now, but particularly for our leaders who've yet to take their second stop. Primarily, it's our drivers in the top 15, or the top 13, I should say, have only made the 1 stop as it currently stands. And then it's Anufriev who's made 2 stops so far, a P14 driver. Where is Vasily, you ask? Well, here he is. And in fact, he's catching up to Mooney quite rapidly here. And I think the M2 competition driver, the Russian, has played his cards really smartly here, because what he's done, he's given himself the opportunity. He's got some traffic ahead, but everyone's now going to feel some traffic at some point in the race, but he's got those pit stops out of the way, and he's not got any pressure from anybody behind him. The nearest driver behind him is Cherpenin, who is down in P15, 10 seconds back. So if Onufriev can keep this momentum up, not make mistakes, I reckon he could be jumping up the order as Lux finally comes into the pit. And take a photo, ladies and... Oh, goodness me, I was going to say take a photo for evidence, but you may not want to, because it looks like that Ferrari has had a major moment, and Lux, who's yet to have taken his pit stop, will now take a pit stop and have to repair damage on the car. And I think that's a collapsed front axle as well on the front right tyre. Of course, this will really hurt his race after running for so long. And here's Cherpenin as he makes his way down towards turn 1. He'll gain the position, of course, as he makes his way into the trail braking corner in the McLaren. So now Lux will, of course, come out and be a long way back with that damage on the car, and that is going to hurt his race considerably. But meanwhile, looking outside of our top 15, we do have well, I'm trying to find Vesfield right now as he's making his way around on circuit. Here is Vesfield down in P21 as he makes his way across that time. He's taken both of his pit stops as we've got a 15-second penalty for Tino van der Velde. We'll try to find out what has happened there with regards to the penalties very shortly. Van der Velde being car number 66, and we haven't got any... Oh, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. It's a 15-second time penalty. Tried to overtake in second to last corner, resulting in the car 16 losing control. So that is for an instant with car number 16. Who is car number 16, I hear you ask? Car number 16 is... I'm just trying to find their number out on circuit for you. I haven't got them at the moment, but I can tell you that there is Izo, who is battling... Well, that's not Izo, in fact, in the Aston Martin. That is Nembrini, who's just found his way past Vesfield. Whilst we were looking slightly off our screen, that's Nembrini who's just made a pass in. Field not battling now, I think, because he will know that Nembrini has to pit. So as a result, he's not going to fight that one too hard, because Nembrini's going to spend the best part of at least 20 or 25 seconds in the pit lane. Field's already got his pit stops out the way, and I think he's put the 2 stops back to back here, Field, in order to just have a clean run to the finish. We'll wait to see, but Van der Velde, we are just trying to figure out what has happened between him and another car, but it is due to contact effectively in Casio Triangle that has set everything off, and that's very unfortunate for Van der Velde as he makes his way around. And meanwhile, whilst we can see Field here falling backwards to Nembrini, who's yet to pit, we look a little bit further up the road. I can tell you that it's the case another driver who, having made both pit stops, will now be looking to try and capitalise. It is Cervelloni here as he makes his way down towards 130R, and as he comes roaring down the straight, it's a situation right now where he's got that traffic ahead, and you can see Van der Velde with that penalty where he's attacking Gellin here. He's looking to the inside again, but he can't find his way on through. But as they make their way through the corners right now, the McLaren driver knows he's got it all to do for Team Tonki as he makes his way through the right-hander of 18 and onto another lap. That 15-second penalty is going to hurt him massively, and it's not a drive-through, so what it means is he must serve it at the end of the race. It will be applied to his race time at the very end, and that is going to see him drop down the order considerably as he makes his way through 1 and up into 2 here, trying to find a way past Gellin, but Gellin proving very difficult as Ryan Meenan is... And Cormac Ryan Meenan just behind as well as we jump on board here with Gellin and look back from the Ferrari driver's car now as they make their way through turn 4. It's a situation where for the Intruder Racing Team driver, he's just going to keep his head down. He's got to pit again though, that's the problem for Gellin. So he's going to fall away from these guys regardless of how much defending he does. How much defending do you do at this point? Do you fight them hard, or do you say work for your teammate effectively, Vesfield, who's into the pits, I believe, Vesfield. I'm not sure what's happened there, but Vez is in. And in fact, I think there might be some damage to the car. We'll take a look very shortly. Mate, he's in once again here. This is a 3rd stop, so we're not sure what's happened, but something has gone wrong. But meanwhile, in that battle for P16, we come back to it, and I was going to say, was Gellin running long here to try and help his teammate out by causing these guys to bunch up and lose time? Well, it looks like right now that Gellin is all on his lonesome, and as they charge out of the hairpin and go down towards turn number 13, they head down towards Spoon Curve once again. You can imagine that Ryan Meenan right now will be just sat there behind the 2 McLarens thinking, okay, lads, take one another off and give me the places, please. As we can see Gellin here, he's got the McLaren of what is Van der Velde. Well, it's the McLaren and the Ferrari, I should say, not the 2 McLarens. Get it right. And as they make their way through 14, it's a situation that Gellin just trying to hold on. But for how long can he play this defence as they make their way down towards 130R? I think Van der Velde at this point is going to be a lot closer. In fact, he's looking to the inside already. He's got the momentum as they charge in towards 130R. It's the Dutchman on the inside, it's the Frenchman on the outside, and immediately the Dutchman takes the place and swings back around to take the racing line. And now will Meenan come on through as well? As Ryan Meenan looks to the inside, he's not close enough there as the FFS car makes his way through the right to left combination of Casio Triangle, and as they now make their way down the hill at this point, he will have a huge amount of momentum them as they charge down towards turn number 1. We ride on board here with the Irishman as he builds up the speed and goes hunting after that position. He looks for the move here. Surely he's going to look to the inside. He's not close enough to attempt it, but can he potentially sight Gellin into making a mistake? It doesn't look as though at this point, and with Pushkarev just 1 second behind these guys right now. And remember, Gellin, Ryan Mina and Pushkarev have all yet to pit for their final stop with 15 minutes to go. So for these three, it's critical. This is all about a battle for position and a battle on strategy. They want to be the lead driver, but Pushkarev will be closing up. We've also got Mooney and Curvalone who are closing up behind. And in fact, speaking of Curvalone right now, he has got Mooney in his sights and he's all over the back of the Porsche driver as they make their way to the end of the S's here through turn number 7. And Mooney holding firm as we see Curvalone. They're getting it a little bit wrong on the exit, so I'm running almost off circuit. The rear tyre, the rear right, almost saying hello to the grass. And as they come through the right-hander of Degnan 1, you can see the SBQR driver really just pushing every ounce out of that Ferrari. He wants that position so badly, but we know one thing about Mooney is he does not buckle under pressure. And as they make their way into the hairpin, you can see the Porsche driver now going full defensive into the hairpin here. This will cost the pair of them time and the opportunity to close up to the guys ahead of them. But I think they'll both be aware of the fact the guys ahead have yet to take their second stop, so they won't be too worried about this battling until Nembrini closes up. Even Nembrini behind in P21, 6 seconds back, has yet to make his second stop, so this is not going to hurt them as they make their way around. And Mooney recently has made his second stop, it should be pointed out. He's actually on his outlap right now, so as a result for Mooney, this is a situation where he cannot afford to lose the position, as we see Cervellone there getting it wrong on the exit, oh sorry, the entry I should say, of 13 and 14, and as a result going deep into the second part of Spoon and now losing out. He's 8 tenths back, and I think just pushed the car a little too hard whilst hunting down Mooney, and now having to wait firmly behind. As meanwhile Shashinov into the pits from what was at the time P12, so as he comes into his pit box right now to take his final stop of the day. Let's take a look a little bit further up the order and look at your race leader. We haven't forgot about, and I can assure you, it's George Boothby still leading by the best part of what is 14 seconds over Spears, as Spears right now down in P2, just falling back gradually here. And I think the Porsche driver, our leader from Yassi, is just breaking away and running this one home right now. He's yet to take his second stop, as is Spears, but do remember that these guys are in a world of their own. Whitehead in P3, meanwhile, he's coming up behind some traffic. That's Emil Blaine and Rena Irfenstedt, and Blaine is a lap down on Irfenstedt, so you can imagine for Blaine, this is a bit of a, well, no, my apologies, that's Fox and Krivic, I should say, looking at the wrong boards on the screen. And as a result, as Krivic has now got that pressure behind him, this is the battle for P23 with the driver for P3 coming up to the back of it. You can imagine the Dragons eSport driver here is going to have Fox peeled in the pressure on behind him, and as they make their way down towards turn 1 here, will Fox have the momentum as we see cars coming out the pits here? And I think Fox is going to have to wait as we see flashing lights from our P3 driver behind of Whitehead, who's trying to say to them, look guys, blue flags, stop fighting, let me on through. And Fox looks at a move on the inside into 2 as Krivic goes a bit deep. They're side by side on the exit, and as they make their way into the left-hander of 3, Fox is going to hold on the outside inside line. There's door contact there, and as they make their way on through, I think it's the case they showed it one another enough respect, but in the end, a tiny bit of contact. I've seen Krivic go into the weeds briefly. He's rejoined down in P24. Fox up to P23. And I think there may be a look at that by the stewards. There may be a warning. Alternatively, a penalty being applied. We'll have to wait and find out. But it was very nip and tuck. And to be fair, they did try to make the most of it in terms of going side by side through the corners as best as they possibly could, as they now continue to make their racing around circuit. But as they make their way down towards what is the hairpin, now you can see Fox trying to make that breakaway and holding on. As meanwhile, we are hearing that Leo Boulay into the pits right now for his final stop. He had that drive-through penalty, and now where is this going to drop him when all is said and done? It's the case the Intruder Racing team driver will feel this most painfully indeed, as we can see all of our drives now coming through on that timing screen, and it's the case that Cherepenin here gaining massively from all this. He's in P11 right now in the McLaren here, making his way through 2 and up into 3, and the Russian, well, he's still got places to potentially gain on Izo, who's 12.7 seconds up the road. Anufriev is in P10, has taken both his pit stops, so he won't be going on Vanufriev, but it's the case as he makes his way through the sequence of corners that compiles the S's and goes on to Sector 2 right now. Cherepenin doing everything he can with 11.5 minutes to go to try and get himself into the top 10. Now, in terms of a status update on the battles inside the top 10 right now, Tan still holding off Andres Mesa by the best part of 9 tenths of a second here, and both of them yet to take their second stop. So this is a big contention point for the two drivers in terms of what do they do at this point. And as they make their way around the circuit right now, it's the case that Tan doing everything to hold on versus Andres Mesa. 11 minutes to go. go and who is the first to make the pit stop. And I would say, if I was in Tan's situation right now, I would look to pit first, because at this point you've got a 1 second advantage. And the thing is, if Andres Mesa comes in behind you because you've given him that sign that you're coming into the pit, then it means that you control essentially the rate of that pit stop. You control the order of proceedings. Meanwhile, if you let Andres Mesa come in first, then he's going to have the undercut with only 10.5 minutes to go. And to be fair, the undercut at this point is probably not going to be as strong, for the simple reason I wouldn't expect either of the drivers to take a new set of tyres at this point. They'll only likely put that 1 litre of fuel in the bare minimum just to get the pit stop out of the way, but you never know how strong that undercut could be. But then again, there is the risk. Do you come out in traffic? Does that compromise your chances? I think right now, assuming both drivers had an identical pit stop, it would be Tan coming back out ahead. But when's he willing to pull the gun on it? That is the question. Or sorry, pull the trigger on it, as Mesa continues to fall back slightly. Meanwhile, down in P6, Morano here, who's the best part of 6 seconds down on the battle for P4. He's had to fight his way up here. He's in P6, and Fornes behind is 6.5 seconds back. And he's yet to take his pit stop alongside Fornes right now, who in P7 in the Aston Martin, with these guys yet to pit. And Soldatov as well in P8. The driver that all eyes will be on right now is Onufriev, because we see the Aston Martin driver come up through turn number 5 and into 6. What you can imagine right now for the Russian, if he nails this right, I mean, the delta to Fornes is 23.5 seconds. I think the pit stop time is a little bit shorter than that, but I may not be 100% accurate on that, to be fair, ladies and gentlemen. But right now, Onufriev could end up coming out in roughly P7, and if he was to do that, he would jump a good chunk of the field through simply running the strategy right. But do keep in mind that he would then have to run to the race with the guys behind with the impetus who want to get past him. But that will be the change in of itself, as we've got 9 minutes remaining. And Harry Spears into the pits from P2 as he just gradually makes his way in. And, well, we can see, meanwhile, it looks as though Mattia Cervellone here with a 10-second penalty. Now, was this for an instant earlier on? Where it's got to be, as he makes his way on through the corners. And what's happened to Cervellone here in the number 259 car? He's not battling with anyone at the moment. He's got back marker in front of him, a back marker behind him. And it's Sorsen versus Överland in the battle for P36, where it's the case that for our Italian here in the number 259 car, it was avoidable contact cutting across 2 other cars into turn 1. So that was, I believe, the battle with car 37 and also car 42, and that was with the cars of what was Soldatov and also, at the time, unless I'm very much mistaken, so we just tried to get the number of car 42, but that was the free wide moment down into turn 1, which was absolutely brilliant. But unfortunately, Cervellone is the one who's picked up the penalty there for turning into drivers. Vesfield being the other driver involved in that, of course. A brilliant free wide moment, but unfortunately there was contact as 3 tried to go to 2 into 1, and that was a bit of a pickle for all of them. But right now, behind what is the position of P19, we can see there the battle for P36, and it's Andreas Sorsen versus Överland here, as we can see the Nordic Racing Team driver leading this battle, and Trond Överland here down in P37. Both of them in the hunt here, both of them from the Nordic countries, and it is the case that right now, not the Nordic countries, my apologies, we take a step back on that one, but it is the case that Överland right now making his way through a spoon curve here. Not to offend anyone on geography, you can tell which subject I didn't do very well at school, but we can see Överland pressing on and on the offensive as they make their way down towards turn number 15, and as they come charged on through, we ride on board here with the Mercedes driver as he goes through 130R and trying to find his way into that position, trying to get one more place before this race is over with 7 minutes to go here. And it's been a difficult day for both of the drivers here, but pressing on all the same. As we can see the Mercedes driver, they're just struggling to get the exit out of Casio versus the Aston Martin in front of him as they now charge down towards turn 1 once again here. The one thing, of course, in the advantage of Överland is the fact he can use this car much more aggressively on the curves compared to Sorensen, unless Sorensen has built that car to run on curves, which can be a little bit risky. They're both running near identical lap times, however, so it's a great battle building up, albeit it's quite a way down the order compared to where the big points are, but still they press on all the same. As meanwhile we look back up towards our leaders, and we can see that Whitehead into the pits right now from P2, and Andres Mesa into the pits from P3. Now this does open things up. Now where is Tan in all of this? Well, Tan right now has got Onufriev behind him, and Onufriev's battling with him here for P7 out on circuit. Onufriev's going to make the move into 130R, and this is not what what Tan will have wanted. As they come through the corner, they're still side by side as Tan rejoins. Into the braking zone they go, and this is critical for the Legion of Racers driver as they make their way through Casio, because Andres Mesa, who if he comes out of the pits right now, will jump the pair of them and essentially come back out, but we'll wait and see. As you can see, that's Spears as well. Spears is in this battle and has dropped to the back of it, so as they make their way across the line here, we can see it's the case they come through. Andres Mesa at the front of your picture. Goodness me, it's all going to come into turn one, and it looks as though Anuferev goes around the outside, but as they make their way through the corner and we get a small amount of lag, it's the situation where Mesa holds the inside versus Anuferev, and Andres Mesa is at the head of this pack as they make their way through the S's right now, and Mesa has gained effectively 3 places for the price of 1 pit stop, and now with only 5.5 minutes remaining, this is not what Spears would have wanted to see. He would not have wanted to come out in all of this. It was looking like a coast to P2, and now it's a loss and drop to P8. Can he get himself ahead of these guys as they battle their way through turn 7 up into 8? And on top of all this, with what is Fornes ahead, 25 seconds ahead and yet to pit, we've got Whitehead who's ahead of this by 20 seconds and has pitted. Right now, Matteo Morano is also out there and has yet to pit. As George Booby comes in, but Booby's already in the pits, and you can imagine how far around on the circuit he is. So Booby's in a world of his own. But could we see Matteo Morano and Ivan Fornes come out into this battle or ahead of it? That will be the big challenge as we look back towards the exterior cameras right now. And as they make their way around through turn at number 12 at this point, you can imagine Spears, after all of this, will be at the back of this pack, absolutely kicking himself for what has turned from a very graceful race for P2 into a disaster situation, because with less than 5 minutes, he's now got to make overtake after overtake. Has he got it in him, or is it the case that the guys ahead are going to be neutralising one another and neutralising his advantage as we ride on board here with the P8 driver as he looks to make the move up into the corner? He goes to the inside here into 130R, but he can't find it as they make the way on through and has to back out considerably, and Spears running out of road to get the move done. He had the overspeed but not enough road, and we can see Andres Mesa really struggling there through Casio Triangle and causing the bunch to come back together as they now make their way down towards what is turn at number 1. But you can see here Spears getting very close already. He's going to use the V8 of that AMG power, and as they make their way down, you can see Tan defending to the inside here. Spears is going to be made to go all the way round, and as they come down into the corner, Spears is going to go all the way around the outside. He just about does it, or does he? As he goes a bit deep, and Tan holds there, and you can see that Spears being made to stay on the wide line. As a result, Tan defends him successfully this time as they make the way through, and Andres Mesa at this point is now in P3 with the pit stops completing. Ivan Fornes is at the back of this pack, the best part of what is a few seconds back. Morano as well has come out 5 seconds behind all of this, so as a result right now it is going to be the case that as Morano's making his way through the S's, Andres Mesa is currently going to be your final podium finisher. If he finishes as he is right now, if everything finishes right now, he would come home in P3. And as he makes his way through Degna 1, this is going to be the change of his life. As we can see here, it's the case that Tan and Spears through Degna 1, and Spears has got the move done. We've just caught the tail end of it as they make their way on through. Come on, cameraman, focus on the battle for P5, not what's going over the bridge. And as they make their way into turn number 11 at this point, it's the situation whereby Spears has now got 2 more cars to get through, and then he's got to go chasing after Whitehead, but Whitehead's so far up the road, it's not going to happen, surely, as they make their way through the complex of corners once again through turn number 12, and at this point Spears has now got 2 Aston Martins ahead of him, which will not want to let go of an opportunity of finishing on the podium as we continue to look around. But with all this, Whitebread right now, sorry, Whitehead I should say, not Whitebread, he's not a loaf, he's not a joke, he's a very successful driver in this race, and as he makes his way through turn 16 and 17 and comes charging through the 18 right now, you can imagine he will be breathing a huge sigh of relief. But looking from him to the battle for P3, we can see Andres Mesa are holding on for now. Spears on the back right now of Anuferev as they make their way into Casio Triangle once again, and as they all concertina together under braking. Now Andres Mesa is going to need to have the mother of all exits here as they make their way through turn number 18. It is a case they've got 2 more laps to go, including the one they're about to go on to, or perhaps that's it. It's going to be very close. Now there will be 1 more lap after this one, but Anuferev is already going defensive versus Spears, who's going to try and go around the outside like he did with Tan, but he's going to be made to go onto the outside line and hold out there, and you can see Anuferev using the same tactic as Tan, but this time Spears has not been caught out by it and is staying very close rather than dropping back as they make their way through once again. They come charging through the corners, and as they make their way through turn number 5, and up into 6. It's the case that now Anuferev really needs to think, does he battle with Spears to hold on to P4, or does he let this one go and let Spears bring P4 back to him for Andres Mesa? We'll have to wait and see, but I think right now Anuferev will want this P4 so much after what's been a brilliant drive, and he will not want to give ground to that Mercedes that looms very large in his mirror and is growing closer by the corner as they make their way through what is Degner 2 once again. And as they come roaring on through the corner at this point, you have to imagine that as they come up in towards the hairpin, will we see Spears look for a late move? Surely not from that far back. All of our drivers will be savvy to that right now and know that could be a race end or a complete disaster, but you can see Spears getting the better run as they come through turn number 12 here, and as they make their way down towards Spoon Curve. It's a situation where Spears is building the momentum. He's inching closer and closer. He looks the outside here, as we can see Anuferev has to go defensive as the leader has gone on to the final lap, and as they make their way through turn number 14, it's one of the situations where Anuferev just is not able to stay close to Mesa anymore, so Spears is going to be getting very close down the run down towards 130R. Anuferev already goes defensive. He shuts off that inside line. He knows that Mercedes is going to come bolting out of the stables. And as they make their way down towards 130R, Anuferev goes back onto the racing line. Spears backing off 9. He can't go all the way around. He's tried that already. It doesn't work. So instead he goes to the outside here for Casio Triangle. He tries to go around the outside to inside. Into the braking zone they go. Spears on the inside of 17. And Harry Spears gets the move done. And now he's up into P4. But now does Anuferev come back at him in the run down towards turn 1 as they go on to their final lap of the race. Lap number 45, and as they come across that timeline, one more lap between them and the end, and we can see here Spears going defensive already as Andres Mesa's given breathing room, and then Anuferev backs off here on that racing line. He can't find a way through. Oh, goodness me, and there's contact, and Anuferev hits the back of Spears, and both drivers see their races fall down as Cherepinin comes on through now to take what is P5 off of them, and we can see it's a situation they all come on through, and just one moment has seen Cherepinin go up into P5, and that's a disaster for Spears, who was doing so well to find his way on through, and now he is ahead, but it's a situation where you can see that he's not going to be happy with that one. But speaking of a driver who will be happy, he's played this one since the start. He took pole position by a phenomenal margin in the end, and whilst it was only 2.5 attempts, it's still a major margin to set a benchmark for the season opener. He played the strategy right. He held off the pressure from Harry Spears in the early stages of the race, and then played the strategy to get himself nice and clear of the chasing pack, and as he now makes his way through the final set of corners, whilst it's not the championship over by any means, you can imagine he set down a good marker. It's George Boothby from Yas Heat, who as he makes his way out of the final corner will take the win in the season opener at Suzuka as he crosses the finish line there to the checker flag. A brilliant drive from Boothby, and behind in P2 as he comes roaring on through 130R right now, it's going to be the PPR esports driver of Luke Whitehead, who on a good amount of strategy and just playing it right and keeping it short and sweet in the Porsche as he makes his way through Casio Triangle, is going to be your P2 finisher when all is said and done, as he makes his way through the final corner here to the flares being let off there and the checker flag. A brilliant drive from Whitehead to come home in P2, and then as he crosses the line, it is going to be Andres Mesa here who comes through. He's held off the pressure, he's played the strategy, and whilst he was not the fastest today, the distinct GG driver has made himself distinct on the strategy call, which got him onto the podium as he crosses the line in P3. A brilliant drive from the Spaniard there to complete our podium, and as we look further down, it's going to be Dylan Tan in P4 and Harry Spears in the end ruining what should have been in his mind a P5. As you can see, Daniela Cherepin comes home in P6 ahead of Spears, Morano in P7, Matteo Morano, Vasily Anuferev in P8, and thinking what could have been. Oh goodness me, and I think that might get very heavily frowned upon by the stewards if that was contact, as we can see Zaholobov in P9, Oleg Zaholobov, and then Tinko van der Velde, despite, well, he's got that 15-second time penalty, so I think that's going to drop him well down the order, and I think it's going to be Konstantin Soldatov who in the end comes home in P10 when all is said and done. A great drive by Soldatov, and then it will be up to the rest of the time sheets to determine the rest of the order. But I believe Mooney will also be promoted to P11 when all is said and done, and then it will be Tinko van der Velde after that, and then Giovanni Izzo will be behind van der Velde in P13 still, and it will be Leo Boulet in P14 with that drive-through penalty costing him massively. Ivan Fornes comes home in P15. It will be Harry Phillips, who in the end, whilst we didn't really get to see too much of Harry Phillips, has made it to P16 when all is said and done. Matthias Servalini comes home in P17, Alexander Shashinov in P18, Cormac Ryan Meenan in P19, and then it is going to be wrapping up our top 20, Kevin Gellin from ITR in P20. But what a fantastic race all the way through, and it's time, ladies and gentlemen, to take a brief breather. We'll be back in approximately 2 to 3 minutes for those post-race podium interviews. You won't want to go anywhere because I'm sure there's plenty to talk about with our podium finishers. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, well, without further ado, we're about to kick off our post-race podium interviews for the season opener at Suzuka, which had it all. It had a runaway leader, or pair of leaders, which ended up with one leader in the end running off into the distance. It had battles up and down the field, all the way from the top 10 to the bottom end of the field, battling for the top 40. But now let's just hear some of the story from our top 3, our podium finishers. We'll start off, of course, with George Boothby. Where is George? I think I've misspelled his name, in fact, slightly, and we're just going to double check that because I'd rather not get it completely wrong. George Boothby, my apologies there, folks. A little bit rusty on spelling, but it's the case that George Boothby doing a fantastic job all the way through and through. And now let's have a word with him. Give us a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen. Just slight technical issues here on our side. Hello, George. Can you hear me?
Hello, I can hear you.
George, a fantastic drive for the season opener and a brilliant win to boot. Congratulations on the win at Suzuka. How does it feel to be on the top step of the podium for the season opener?
Hey, thank you so much. It feels great because this track I had a race with Harry Spears a week ago, a 4-hour race around here, and it was just neck and neck the whole way. But he managed to just beat me, so I feel like I've got redemption now. But yeah, it was an awesome race. It was run so well. All the back markers were so respectful. It was a tough race at the start because Harry was right behind me, but then I don't really know why he dropped off. The second stint, his pace just wasn't there, so obviously I took the advantage of that and just pulled the gap. But yeah, I'm really happy. I'm quite new to the Porsche, so to get a win on the opener, I can't complain. It was awesome.
And just taking a step back, before considering the race, qualifying firstly, I have to ask, qualifying on pole by just over 0.2 of a second, was it the perfect lap or was there a little bit more out there? Because it seemed to be a really strong lap, but just wondering, was there more in the tank?
It was a tiny bit more. I lost a 10th on the tight hairpin in the middle of the lap. I just ran a little bit wide, but everything else was like as good as I could do it. So, you know, the thing with the Porsches, it's like some cars like the Aston maybe, or the Merc, you can sort of get consistent at nailing that hot lap. Whereas with the Porsche, there's always time on the table. Like, to get a perfect lap with this car, you've got to be, I don't know, praying to the devil or something. Like, it's so difficult. But yeah, I think being a 10th off what my absolute best could be, like, that's really good. I was proper proud of that lap.
And then after a brilliant qualifying lap, translating that into the race, what was the opening game? Because as you were saying a moment ago when talking about the win, Harry Spears being very close with you at the start. Did you expect the Mercedes driver to be right there with you into turn 1? Just take us through, what was your opening strategy?
The start, I just wanted to stay at front. And I knew the Porsche gets a great acceleration off the line. So it was to be expected, in my head at least, to maintain first after the first corner. But then I knew how quick that Merc is in a straight line. It is outrageously fast. So, like, there was a few times where he was about 3 or 4 tenths back, and then by the end of the straights, he was trying to go for a move. So, my goal was just to try and break the slipstream because it was really helping him down the back straights before 130R, then the main straight. So, it took a while, and I got a little bit lucky with some traffic as well, but once I broke the slipstream, that was when I was able to just build a 10th or so each lap, and then I just kept the pressure on, and that's what got me the win.
Well, it was a brilliant way to approach it. And I do have to ask, when you came out of the pits, going on to your second stint, you saw that the gap between yourself and Spears had opened up quite considerably. Were you thinking at this point, has something gone wrong, or was your head just down thinking, right, second stint, get on with it, look at it on the third stint?
Yeah, so he pitted quite early, and that worried me because I thought he's just going to go for the undercut here. But because it was like 4 or 5 laps early, I knew if I pitted, like, I'm going to have too much fuel, I'm going to be slow in my second stint, I might even just come out into traffic as well. So I sort of just risked it and thought, I'm just going to run the car out until it's empty on fuel, then I'll pit for fuel and tyres. And thankfully it worked. I came out actually with a bigger gap, so he must have had an issue or something. And then, yeah, in the second stint, he was dropping off a lot, and I'm going to assume something didn't go right. Whether he got damaged or maybe like had a slide on the open lap and scrubbed the tires, I'm not sure. But yeah, his pace in the second stint just wasn't there. So, like obviously that was beneficial for me. I used it. I flew as quick as I could, and it worked out. So yeah, I'll have to talk to him and see exactly what happened. But yeah, it took the pressure off me just a little bit in the second stint, and then just brought it home.
Well, having brought home the opening win, I have to ask, looking ahead now to Kyalami in a week's time, how are you feeling for the African circuit?
Oh, that is a track I love. It's probably my favourite track on this game, apart from Donington. So, and this car is so good there. So, I'm going to be shooting to finish, hopefully top 3, maybe even get the win again. We'll see, but fingers crossed.
Well, George, thank you for your time. Congratulations on the win once again, and we look forward to seeing you in a week's time taking it to the South African circuit.
Nice one. Thank you so much, guys. Awesome opener. Appreciate it.
Brilliant. Thank you. So hearing there from George Booby, very happy with the win, and indeed that qualifying form translating into a fantastic form in race. But of course the pressure which he acknowledged there, and great respect shown between himself and Harry Spears, but in the end Spears falling off after the opening pit stop and something going wrong. And I think as a result, from that point onwards, as Booby was saying, whilst he had his head down still, it was the pressure had been relieved to some extent. And as a result of that, he was able to focus more on just bringing the car home and bringing home the win. And we look forward to seeing what he can do at Kyalami next week. But now we go from our first place man to our second place man. And that is, of course, Luke Whitehead. As we just try to get him into the interview room. Hello, Luke. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Loud and clear. Loud and clear.
Luke, a brilliant drive to P2. How's it feel to have finished on the second spot of the podium?
Yeah, I mean, mixed feelings, to be honest. I mean, I didn't really have the pace. In qualifying, you know, I was very, very close and probably had the potential for pole. And then in the race, I was a little bit worried, I'll be honest. A little bit worried about 130R, and having never driven the Porsche on race few around there, I was a little bit nervous and, you know, trying to preserve the car. I went 2 clicks softer on the rear anti-roll bars and a click stiffer, so it just meant that the car just didn't turn. And to be fair, you could probably see it on the camera at the first couple of laps. The car just was pushing past every single corner. I was having to move my brake bias right the way back, and the problem was then I was having to turn and steer more than what you want to in the Porsche, and that just created a vicious cycle where I was, you know, oversteering the car, wearing the front tires, and that was just worsening the understeer problem. So it's getting worse and worse. But as the fuel load dropped down, it got a little bit better. I think I was pretty similar to what Harry's pace was. I was still a little bit off of George, which I'd kind of expect from him. I'm not too experienced in that car and track combo, whereas he, I think, has done a couple of races recently. So I'm not too unhappy, all things considered, and looking forward to the rest of the season.
Oh, that's brilliant to hear. And just coming on to particularly those early stages in the race, and also around that first pit stop, we saw on the first stint in particular, as you're saying, the struggles that you were experiencing with the car. And we saw the interbattle between yourself and Leo Boulet in particular, the Frenchman from ITR, where you two were having a great scrap, and that continued after the first round of pit stops. But we did see at one point, we didn't catch it on camera, but we saw you get past Boulet. What happened exactly? Was there just an overtake, an off-track moment? Because we're wondering how you suddenly jumped ahead of him.
Yeah, I mean, it happened pretty surprisingly. I mean, I came out the pits about, I think, 15 or so seconds behind Leo, and I was a little bit confused. I was like, how have I lost so much time? I know he pitted 1 lap before me, or 2 laps before me, but I didn't think the undercut would be worth that much. And then, lap by lap, I was catching about 2 to 3 seconds every lap, so I sort of worked out that he hadn't gone for tyres, and I had changed tyres, and he obviously hadn't. So I knew that when I caught him, it would be a relatively straightforward move. It wasn't. I was wrong, and I went around the outside of Spoon, which is one of the hardest corners to overtake at the best of times, especially on the outside when it's under braking. So it was a pretty scary move, pretty sketchy. You know, the car was really flighty and tried to spin me round. I was just braking so late. But you know, Leo gave really good respect. He could have tried to go in harder, and that would have caused a crash. So it was, you know, fair play to him for sort of backing out a little bit. It's always good. You always have to have trust in the other driver, and I think it kind of shows that you can go side by side. You can battle with people pretty much anywhere on any circuit, as long as everyone's respectful and as long as everyone makes the sensible decisions, which unfortunately isn't very common, but when it is brilliant. So thank you to him.
Oh, that's brilliant to hear the respect shown between you two. And I do have to ask, however, and this may just upset him and a couple other drivers around where you finished. When you came out the pits after your second stop and saw that you'd emerged out of all of it in P2, was there a massive grin on your face thinking, where has this come from? Or was it sort of, it's all part of the plan, boys?
I'd say it was more of a face of confusion to us. I was kind of just came out of the pits. I was like, why am I P2? What's happened? You know, because Harry had a big old gap, and I was kind of wondering whether he'd get caught up in anyone else's misfortunes, but he didn't, and he changed tyres. I'm not really sure what the reasoning was. I don't know whether it was a mistake or whether it was purposeful. I don't really know. But yeah, I came out the pits and I knew obviously the gap to Anufriev, Mooney, I think it was Dylan Tan as well. I knew the gap would be relatively big, but somehow I stretched it out through the pit stop phases. And then, yeah, as I say, second place, it was plain sailing from the rest of it. So I'm fortunate that everyone else sort of had their own little issues, and I could kind of just have a relatively uneventful race, I think. So yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, the other races won't be like that. So I'm taking any fortune that I can get at the moment. It's going to be very, very close later on.
Well, speaking of other races, our last question for you is, we head to Kyalami in a week's time off to the South African circuit. How are you feeling for the circuit?
To be honest, I don't really know. I mean, it's not been one of my stronger circuits in the past, but I'm hoping that the Porsche can give me a little bit more fortune. Obviously, all of us are going into the unknown tomorrow. There's a new update for the game, which is, by all accounts, has completely changed it. Changed the physics, changed the handling, changed the setups, changed the order of the cars. So for all we know, the Porsche could be absolutely awful next time. You know, we don't know. No one knows. So it brings a little bit of spice into the next round, and definitely is a bit more exciting and adds a couple of other factors. So I wouldn't be surprised if you saw some guys that finished further down today being right up the front next time. Again, none of us know what to expect, so it's very, very exciting times. Very edge of the seat stuff.
Oh, indeed, and we look forward to it, and we look forward to seeing you take to the circuit in a week's time, and whether you can make it 2 podiums out of 2. But until then, thank you for joining us in the interview room, and congratulations once again on a brilliant second place.
Thank you, Paul. Have a good evening.
You too. So hearing there from Luke Whitehead, who was quite surprised with that result, and as you heard, particularly when he came out of the pits from his second stint, just to see around him that he was in P2 and where's the rest of the field gone. But then that's the way it sometimes goes, and he played it right on the strategy, despite the fact the car was compromised, particularly at the start of the race, where he was saying about the fact the car just wanted to go deep into the corners. It didn't want to rotate through the corners, and it was only as the fuel came out of his Porsche 911 that the car started to rotate. But he adapted to it, and he made it work, and in the end he survived to make it home on second place. But now we must come from our second place man to our third place man, a name that is very familiar, and that is Andres Mesa. Let's have a word with him. Hello Andres, can you hear me?
Hello Paul. Yes, I can.
Andres, a P3 today in what was a very tense race, but in the end you brought it home on the podium. How do you feel about third place?
It feels great because I don't know what happened there. I didn't expect to get a podium at all.
Indeed, it was quite a surprise moment for us, a very intense battle all the way at the end of the race. But before we get to the very end, just taking a step back, qualifying saw you put yourself in the top 10. Did you feel as though there was more out on the table in qualifying, or was that the best you could do in qualifying given the intensity of the lap times?
Maybe I could have got maybe a couple of tenths better, faster than that. But I was quite happy with my lap anyways.
Oh, indeed. And I think one of the things that was observed that with you being happy with your lap, it translated into your race pace. Although one of the challenges we saw you have time and time again is you kept getting caught behind. I think it was, at first it was the Ferrari of Tan, unless I'm mistaken. Yep. Just take us through that situation, because you had so much pace, it just didn't seem as though you could make the move.
Yeah, but I couldn't quite find it. It's so difficult. Yeah, it was, I think, coming out of the pits, of the first pit stop, yeah, I made a mistake and he got past me, and after that, I just couldn't capitalize.
I see. And then going from your first pit stop to your second pit stop, just take us through what was going through your mind when you emerged from the pits and could see behind you. You had Tan, you had Spears, I think you had, oh goodness, but I think you had two other drivers as well, all trying to come through to take what would eventually be third place, and all trying to battle into turn one.
Yeah, I mean, I knew it was going to be close, obviously, with Tan on the Ferrari and Anufriev, but I didn't expect to come out on P3 with Spears behind it. I don't know what happened there. Well, I'll take it. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. And I assume when you saw that Anufriev and Spears were battling really hard come the final lap, was in your mind at that point you sort of thinking, okay, I've got P3, I've just got to get the car home now?
Yeah, it was quite a relief to see them side by side fighting, because I knew that was pretty much, I just had to bring it home after that, yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant to hear. And then last question for yourself. We head to Kyalami in a week's time for the South African circuit. How are you feeling for that circuit?
Yeah, I really like Kyalami. I think, I mean, these guys up front their pace is insane. So, I'm not sure. I haven't driven the Aston much on Kyalami, but I do like the track a lot. I'll try to get close to the top 5. Should be a good position for me, I think.
Oh, definitely. Well, we look forward to seeing you take to the circuit in a week's time, but until then, congratulations on the 3rd place today, and we look forward to seeing you out on track in a week's time.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, I'll see you next week.
All the best.
Thank you.
So hearing there from Andres Mesa, who quite surprised, I think, but at the same time quite relieved and exhausted to bring home what was that podium in the end. And it was just about, I think, for him, spending the right amount of time in the pits for his first stint, and also for his first stop and his second stop, and then just simply keeping the car on that inside line in the run down to turn 1 when he had the huge gaggle of cars battling for what was effectively 3rd place, and he'd come out right at the front of it. And by simply being on that tight line and going defensive, he could take home 3rd place in the race. And also that relief, as you heard there, of seeing that Anufriev and Spears were battling for P4 on the final lap. And that just brought Mesa the time to be able to bring the car home comfortably in 3rd place. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that brings to a conclusion our proceedings for today. Thank you very much for watching, and this has been the opening round of the Intercontinental Championship. If you do want to know more about the NXTGEN Racing community, why not check us out on our official website, that is nextgenracing.co.uk. Alternatively, you can check us out on facebook.com/groups/NextGen Racing. Also, a big thank you to our partners without whom this would not be possible. That's the SimGrid, so www.thesimgrid.com, and also Coach Dave Academy, that's coachdaveacademy.com. Without them, again, it would not be possible to bring you this series, and we really appreciate their time and involvement. But now, going from Suzuka to next time, we'll be heading to Kyalami in South Africa for what is expected to be another thriller of a race in round number 2. A different circuit, a much different circuit from Suzuka. Will we see a change up in the order, or will we see familiar faces take to the front row and indeed complete the top 5? Particularly given the fact that we have got a major physics model change coming to Assetto Corsa Competition edition on PC as of tomorrow, and our drivers will have the best part of 6 days to become acquainted with those changes. It's going to be interesting, it's going to be tense, and you can be certain anything can happen over the next 90 minutes of racing. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, we have been Next Gen Racing. I have been your host, Paul TX141 Walsh, and until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, because from all of us here at the Intercontinental Challenge Championship, the most important thing is to remember to stay on track. Good night.